Before leaving with Asuma, Mu Yue ran an appraisal on Hiruzen Sarutobi. He was curious how rich the skill set of the man who called himself the professor of ninjutsu would be, someone who claimed to know all of Konoha's techniques. The panel that popped up was enormous. Hiruzen's chakra was listed as 170,000. Scores of jutsu scrolled by. Combination ninjutsu, proficient, 13,000, 15,000. Fire release chakra nature transformation, proficient, 6,200, 15,000. Earth release, proficient, 9,500, 15,000. Water release, 2,000, 15,000. Mu Yue estimated there were thousands of entries. From a numbers perspective, the title was deserved. Hiruzen hadn't copied a single technique with Sharingan. He had learned them all himself. That said, most of the techniques were only at the introductory level. Few were skilled, and even fewer reached proficient status. Mu Yue had expected Hiruzen to be proficient in all 5 basic chakra natures, but the old man really only had 3 fully proficient, and the other 2 were merely approaching proficiency. The system's proficiency thresholds are tougher than I thought, Mu Yue thought. In pure fire and water nature transformation, Mu Yue himself was actually stronger than Hiruzen. But in every other respect, raw chakra, taijutsu, battlefield experience, jutsu configuration, Hiruzen utterly eclipsed him. After seeing that panel, Mu Yue finally understood what a true all-round ninja looked like. Ninjutsu, taijutsu, genjutsu, sealing techniques, secret jutsu, forbidden jutsu, everything was on Hiruzen's list. It was hard to put a proper value on that breadth. After teaching Asuma, Mu Yue went back into the Leaf Village's main district to meet Minato and Kushina, and demonstrated the whole process of making his illusory Mappo tofu. Minato and Kushina wanted to see how soybeans could be turned into something that tasted like meat, and Mu Yue showed them the cooking and let them taste the result. Kushina still found it hard to believe. "Mu Yue, how did you even think of making soybeans taste like meat?" she asked. "An accidental flash of inspiration," Mu Yue replied after a moment. He couldn't say the dishes had been taught to him by someone else. That would raise questions he didn't want to answer, so he claimed them shamelessly as his own. Minato asked about Mu Yue's progress with sealing techniques. It had been about a week since he was given the seals to study. Mu Yue shared his initial impressions of the 5 fingers seal. Minato warned him that the 5 finger seal was much harder than the 1 finger and 3 finger seals. Its difficulty increased substantially. With study and steady practice, however, it was learnable. Minato worried Mu Yue might lose confidence if his progress stalled, so he spoke encouragingly. Mu Yue steered the conversation toward general sealing theory rather than specific problems with his current practice. If he'd asked directly about the difficulties he was having with the 5 fingers seal, Minato and Kushina could probably have deduced how far along he really was. By keeping his questions conceptual, he avoided revealing his true progress. On Saturday night, when his disciples were excused from training, Mu Yue went alone into the south border forest to practice. He wanted to test the limits of his ultimate strength. First, he practiced seals. 5 fingers seal, he murmured, condensing chakra on the 5 fingers of his right hand and slapping the energy onto a shadow clone. Black sealing patterns bloomed over the clone's body. The seal had taken. Seeing the 5 finger seal appear at introductory level on his panel, Mu Yue thought of his next steps. He planned to practice the 5 element seal after finishing the 5 fingers seal. Once he could bring the 5 element seal to introductory level, he would use a proficiency scroll to push it to skilled level, then learn the contract seal and raise that to skilled level as well. With both seals at skilled rank, his knowledge of sealing techniques would jump dramatically, strong enough perhaps to begin researching Root's cursed seals and ultimately to solve the tongue-severing seal problem that had driven him to study seals in the first place. Keeping his sensing jutsu active, Mu Yue walked deeper into the trees. A month had passed since he reached proficient level with rock breathing. He knew the mechanics. Once a breathing technique reached the introductory level, you could use total concentration breathing for powerful short bursts. At skilled level, the constant state maintained a weaker version of total concentration breathing around the clock. For him, achieving a constant state was vital It meant his body would be continuously trained. Over the past month, he'd already noticed genuine physical gains and a slightly faster natural chakra recovery. Tonight, he wanted to combine 8 gates with rock breathing. He had mastered opening the first 3 gates, the safe zone, of the 8 gates that didn't crush the body immediately. Mu Yue didn't have Metkai mastery from some story, so he opened them deliberately, one by one. Gate of opening, open. When he began, he felt a restriction in his body loosen. Sealed chakra burst out, his muscles tightened, and his speed and strength spiked. By the time he opened the 3rd gate, the gate of life, his face flushed, chakra roared through him, and a green energy hummed around his form. Zap, he checked his appraisal then. Chakra, 2,200. His chakra had surged past 20,000. It felt violently agitated. He couldn't have performed delicate chakra operations or released refined ninjutsu in that state. He had expected that. He inhaled deeply, entering the total concentration breathing of rock breathing, and the overall physical boost steadied into something he could use. He threw a casual punch. The shockwave alone felled more than a dozen large trees. He didn't even need chakra enhancement to crush rocks like they were tofu. His running speed was practically indistinguishable from body flicker technique. After a few minutes, he released the 8 gates and the total concentration state. The exhaustion hit him hard. The combination of rock breathing and the 8 gates had indeed raised his ceiling, but it was punishing to use. He couldn't keep it up long. He worried the commotion would attract Anbu or Root if used carelessly. Even now, after only 3 minutes of maximal output and without the cursed mark activated, he felt drained. Had he enabled the cursed mark, he feared he would have passed out on the spot when he let go. The experiment confirmed his expectations. Rock breathing paired very well with the 8 gates, providing a powerful burst option that increased his upper limit. With that extra trump card, his sense of security improved a little. Besides limits in chakra and experience, he already had several viable methods to use in a fight. The training plan is almost complete, he thought as he made his way back. I can start my disciples on breathing technique training. Sunday morning, Mu Yue went to the south border forest as usual, planning to start another round of instruction. He didn't launch right into teaching the breathing technique, though. First, he had Metkai and Obito finish today's running competition. He'd used the appraisal technique yesterday to check Obito's progress with the move. Obito was close to mastering it. A little more effort today, and he should pull it off. Today, we'll change the rules a little, Mu Yue said with a smile. The winner's exemption will be added to the loser's burden. Ah, doesn't that mean the loser could end up with 80 questions? Obito flinched. Under Mu Yue's new rule, if the winner was exempt from questions and the loser failed to break their limit, their penalty could balloon to 80 questions. Obito had won before, but he'd lost more than he won. With this change, the number of questions could be doubled, or worse. Metkai wiped sweat from his brow. He won a lot, but he lost sometimes too. This is a special Sunday event. After today, the rules go back to normal, Mu Yue explained. Both of them relaxed. Thank goodness it was only for one day. They'd both endured over 100 questions in past combat drills, but those times were something they preferred to keep buried. Why the special event? Is today some holiday? Obito asked, puzzled. Because today is the 111th anniversary of me becoming a teacher, Mu Yue replied, half joking. It was in fact his 111th day as a teacher, and his 111th day since he had transmigrated into the Hokage world. All right, get ready to start. Obito and Metkai finished their warm-ups and took their marks. Rin Nohara, training a short distance away, cheered for Obito with a bright smile. I beat Guy in the practical test. I shouldn't have any trouble today, Obito said with forced confidence. 80 questions, and Rin's watching. I absolutely can't lose this time. Ready, go! Whoosh! They both exploded with chakra at the same instant. Under the pressure of those 80 questions, Metkai and Obito both launched into super starts. Sensing the thunder of their footfalls, Obito felt his urgency spike. He gritted his teeth and pushed, ignoring the burn in his leg muscles, to use the technique again. Metkai wouldn't be intimidated. Seeing Obito accelerate, he summoned his reserves and began to close the gap. His physique was stronger, and he'd already mastered the technique. If he got within range, Obito would basically be beat. As they neared the finish line, the distance between them shrank. Then Metkai activated his sprint mode, his form blurring as he leapt far forward in an instant. Obito responded, charging his not-yet-perfect move as hard as he could. A streak of green flashed in Obito's peripheral vision, Metkai in his tight suit. Oh no, Obito thought. He felt a bad premonition. Guy must have made progress again. I absolutely can't lose. Obito poured all his strength into his legs. Both of them used the move at the same time. Their bodies vanished from their starting points. Who won? Rin only caught a blur. The next moment, both competitors reappeared at the finish line, side by side. Obito wins. Guy, 70 questions, Mu Yue announced. During that final sprint, Obito had finally learned the move completely. He'd mastered the three-stack technique and, thanks to a slightly closer starting position, edged out the victory. Obito collapsed to the ground, panting, chest burning, breath hot in his throat. He was exhausted, but ecstatic. 80 fewer questions was like having lost 2 fewer times. More importantly, he'd won in front of Rin. When he struggled to his feet, Rin worriedly asked, Obito, do you want to rest a bit longer? It's fine, just a short run, no big deal, he lied, trying to steady trembling legs. Mu Yue grinned, thinking aloud, the distance was a bit short, let's double it tomorrow. Obito froze. I still have energy, Metkai said, trying to hide his dread of the questions. Let's run again. I feel like I can still improve. Aside from the punishment, Guy genuinely loved competitions. Even in loss, he made progress. Obito wasn't sure whether Guy genuinely wanted another run or was trying to lure him into more questions. I was using a literary flourish earlier. You misunderstood me, Obito mumbled. Rin prodded his thigh with a finger and his leg shook involuntarily. Don't overdo it, Obito. You're trembling. If we double the distance again, you won't be able to get up, Rin sighed. Obito felt a wave of weariness so deep he wanted everything to stop. He'd only wanted to show off a little in front of Rin. Why did it take so much? Rest up. Prepare to learn new ninjutsu, Mu Yue said, changing the subject. This time I'm going to teach you a highly difficult secret technique. You must learn it seriously. A highly difficult secret technique? Then it must be powerful. Obito brightened immediately. More difficult often meant stronger. Yes, it's very hard to learn, but if you master it, it will greatly increase your strength. Mu Yue nodded. Since the breathing technique had been localized, its power was enormous, and its difficulty had been cranked to the maximum. By Hokage standards, his 2 existing breathing techniques were both S-rank forbidden ninjutsu. Rock breathing in particular was devilishly hard to train, akin to opening the 8 gates, long, head-down practice required. Teacher, do I have to learn it too? I'm a bit slow at ninjutsu, Metkai admitted, scratching his head. His ninjutsu talent lagged. Even the 3-body technique had been tough for him. Yes, you'll learn, but what you learn will be different from theirs. Just believe you can do it, Mu Yue replied. After a short rest, Mu Yue called Shisui over and prepared to begin teaching the breathing technique. Shisui and Obito, you 2 will learn flame breathing. Guy, you'll learn rock breathing. Mu Yue announced the next training focus. He had already warned them this material would be difficult and demanded serious study, so even usually excitable Obito fell silent and listened intently. Rock breathing was the hardest to master, so Mu Yue sent a shadow clone to explain the theory to Shisui and Obito while he personally began teaching Metkai. The core of any breathing technique is the breathing itself. Skilled, total concentration breathing, Mu Yue said, laying out the principle. You draw a large amount of oxygen into the body and distribute it to every cell. That comprehensively boosts strength and speed. If you can achieve rock breathing and enter a constant state of total concentration breathing, not only will your strength increase, but your healing will accelerate and your mental clarity will improve. Maintain total concentration, breathing around the clock, and your physique will strengthen several times faster. Master rock breathing on top of that, and you'll be on the path to becoming the strongest taijutsu ninja. Metguy's eyes lit up. What a powerful jutsu, he breathed. The idea that the gains he currently took years to earn could be reached in a year or a year and a half was intoxicating. He straightened, resolved to pursue taijutsu to the end. Guy, step back a little, Mu Yue said, preparing to demonstrate rock breathing's true power. Rock breathing, total concentration breathing, finger gun. He inhaled deeply, filling every cell with oxygen, concentrated that force into his index finger, added chakra, and pointed toward the river some 80 meters away. A gust of wind stirred as invisible shockwaves streaked across the air, and then the river erupted in a series of thunderous explosions. Waves over 10 meters high smashed the surface. Some fish were thrown onto the bank. Fortunately, the nearby trees were 20 meters tall. If they'd been shorter, Mu Yue wouldn't have dared use that much force. This is the power rock breathing can unleash in a state of total concentration breathing, Mu Yue said, lowering his hand. This destructive power. Metkai stared, his face alight with awe. Even from more than 80 meters away, a single finger attack had such force. No ordinary body could withstand that kind of strike. You'll be even stronger than this one day, Mu Yue said with a smile, patting Guy's head. Train hard. Guy was thrilled. Mu Yue's demonstration replayed in his mind as Mu Yue began the lesson in earnest. Stand properly, he instructed, and Guy snapped to attention. Relax your upper body as you inhale and keep your lower body stable, Mu Yue taught, starting with the fundamental, the breath. Guy tried to follow, but Mu Yue shook his head. Breathe with your abdomen. Don't just open your mouth wide. Use your abdomen. He demonstrated several times, then had Guy try again. Guy scratched his head. Teacher, I tried to inhale forcefully, but I don't feel what you described. Don't rush. Take your time. Keep practicing, Mu Yue said gently. Rock breathing was difficult. Mu Yue hoped Guy could grasp it within a year. He sent a shadow clone to continue supervising Guy's practice, and then went to stand with Obito and Shisui. Teacher Mu Yue, was that move Guy's future technique? It looked so powerful. Obito asked the instant Mu Yue's main body arrived. They'd all seen the commotion. It was Taijutsu in a state of total concentration breathing, rock breathing, Mu Yue confirmed. That's incredible, Obito said. If Guy learns rock breathing... Don't worry, Mu Yue interrupted with a smile. The flame breathing you two will train in is no less effective. It can boost your strength significantly as well. Both breathing techniques were top-tier forbidden jutsu. How effective they were would depend on the user's skill. Could you show us flame breathing too? Obito asked eagerly. Shisui, curious as ever, nodded. Mu Yue nodded and shifted his breathing rhythm from rock to flamber, walking toward the river as he spoke. When you learn flame breathing and enter a constant state of total concentration breathing, it will speed up your fire release nature transformation and increase the power of your flames. If you can maintain total concentration breathing continuously, that accelerated transformation becomes a constant state. You'll have far greater explosive potential. It also improves physical strength and recovery to some degree. At the water's edge, he formed hand seals and released a ninjutsu. Fire release, fire dragon flame bullet. He unleashed a torrent of flame that surged like a dancing dragon. The fire split into 3 streams, forward, left, and right, and in an instant a 20-meter-wide sheet of flame covered the river. Blazing embers hit the water and billowed steam, shrouding the area in a thick white mist. Mu Yue used wind release to disperse the vapor so the demonstration wouldn't obscure their view. He had even stronger techniques. Head Crusher and Great Fire Annihilation were both more powerful and had wider range, but using them here would likely have burned the surrounding forest. He restrained himself. So powerful. I really want to learn it, Obito admitted. Is this flame breathing an S-rank forbidden jutsu? Shisui asked, stunned. Mu Yue's abilities grew more mysterious with each display. Every time they thought they'd gauged his limits, he revealed something new that left them astonished. Chapter 104, Student's Progress. That's good. The breathing technique is very difficult to learn, and the training isn't easy either, Mu Yue said with a serious expression. Although flame breathing was somewhat easier to pick up than rock breathing, that was only relative. The technique was still extremely demanding. The breathing technique's significance surpassed any ninjutsu or taijutsu he had taught before. After demonstrating the power of fire release under flame breathing, Mu Yue formally began teaching the two how to practice it. Stand straight, relax your upper body, steady your lower body, breathe from your abdomen, let oxygen flow in, reach your chakra points and meridians. Here the difference between flame breathing and rock breathing became clear. Rock breathing focused mainly on strengthening overall physical power, while flame breathing emphasized harmonizing with chakra to amplify fire release. Hoo, hoo! Obito opened his mouth and inhaled deeply. Thump! Mu Yue tapped Obito's head with 2 fingers, then used the side of his hand to lightly strike Obito's abdomen and said, "Use your abdomen. Don't just open your mouth and take random breaths. Pay attention to rhythm and technique." Huh? Obito blinked, surprised. He hadn't expected breathing to be so difficult. Even Shisui, who normally picked up ninjutsu quickly, was struggling with the breathing technique and couldn't quite catch the knack. But none of this surprised Mu Yue. Even talented students had limits. Over the morning, he kept moving between students, spending an hour with one group before switching to another, repeating the cycle. After the morning passed, the proficiency for all 3 disciples was still 0, which made Mu Yue feel the weight of how hard the technique really was. At noon, Mu Yue returned to his home in the Leaf Village main district, compiled the students' strength test data, and then brought the records with him to tutoring. Perhaps because he had mentioned he would send the data, or perhaps because Hiruzen Sarutobi hadn't been busy recently, Mu Yue encountered the 3rd Hokage again. "Hokage," Mu Yue greeted, handing over the organized sheets. "This is the data from the students' strength tests." Thank you, Mu Yue," Hiruzen said with a smile, taking the papers and flipping through them. Mu Yue had sorted the scores by group, placing the initial group test at the top and the weekly strength test scores afterward. The sheet included scoring standards. Group C and Group B used 4th grade standards, while Group A used the graduating chuunin standards. The 3rd Hokage scanned the pages. The data showed that after 3 weeks of special training, every student had made marked progress. If Mu Yue hadn't falsified the data, this special training would be an unqualified success, and it would also reflect well on Mu Yue's teaching ability. This wasn't just one class. The special training included every 4th grade student, outstanding students from grades 1 to 3, and a handful of graduating chuunin, over 300 students in total. "Mu Yue, you've done very well. You've worked hard," Hiruzen praised. "The students trained diligently too. It's not only my credit," Mu Yue said modestly. Hiruzen nodded in satisfaction. "I'll come to observe your final test for this special training. I hope that won't trouble you?" "Not at all. The students will be thrilled if the Hokage comes," Mu Yue said with a smile. It was true. Hiruzen may have had a poor reputation in another life, but here he was a widely respected figure, having served as Hokage for decades. After reporting to his superior, Mu Yue took Asuma to train. "Sigh, Teacher Mu Yue really shouldn't let the old man come," Asuma muttered during a break. If Hiruzen attended, Asuma's good results would feel expected. After all, he was the 3rd Hokage's son. "Asuma, have you forgotten what I told you?" Mu Yue asked. "Don't worry about what others think. You don't live for others, you live for yourself," Mu Yue said, sliding into one of his motivational speeches. After a dose of inspirational words, Asuma steadied himself and trained with renewed focus. On Monday, Mu Yue announced to the summer special training students that the 3rd Hokage would be attending their final exam. The announcement set the students buzzing with excitement. This was the Hokage. If you randomly asked 10 students at the academy about their dreams, 8 would say they wanted to be Hokage someday. The chance to be seen by the current Hokage was a big deal. Even the 3rd Hokage will be coming. "Izumo, this is our chance to make a name for ourselves," Kotetsu Hagane said excitedly. "If the Hokage remembers our names, we'll get noticed in the village," Izumo Kamizuki agreed. "You two should give it up," Anko scoffed. "One of you was eliminated in the 1st round, the other in the 2nd. The Hokage won't pay you any mind. A great figure like the 3rd Hokage will surely see that Izumo and I are uncut gems. Someone like you, who only knows brute force, would never understand," Kotetsu shot back. "Then I'll show you the power of brute force." Anko snapped and lunged, sending the two scrambling. Kurenai Yuhi, upon hearing the news, trained even harder, determined not to be embarrassed by academy students again like before. When Obito heard, he immediately daydreamed about the future. If the 3rd Hokage sees my performance, he might say I have what it takes to be Hokage, right? Ha-ha! Obito laughed loudly, ignoring the looks from those nearby. Oh no, if Kotetsu and Izumo go spouting nonsense when the Hokage's here, it'll be a disaster, Ebisu muttered. He intended to warn his two charges before the exam. If their antics reached the Hokage, their ninja careers might be over before they began. Everyone, quiet down and keep training. Let the Hokage see your improvements, Mu Yue said with a gentle smile, pleased to see the students' spirits roused. Although the summer special training lasted only 5 weeks, the schedule was intense, over 40 hours of training per week. Based on his experience with Class 1, Grade 1, Mu Yue felt he could trigger a reward for improvement, and he worried about just barely missing that threshold. That worry pushed him to make everyone train as hard as possible. Those of you who have learned the body flicker technique, step forward, Mu Yue called to Group A. Shisui, Obito, Metkai, Asuma, and the others who had already mastered the body flicker technique stepped out of formation as instructed. For the next 2 weeks, besides basic training, the main focus will be practicing the body flicker technique, Mu Yue announced, laying out the training schedule. Then he added to the students who already knew the technique, if you've already learned it, you can choose your own training for this period. You can continue to study with me as usual, or practice independently. The body flicker he planned to teach was not some exotic shave technique, but the widely used village-style body flicker technique, the D-rank Taijutsu he had first shown Shisui. In Konoha, this basic body flicker held a similar place to the three-body technique in the academy, simple, practical, and extremely useful. Compared with body flickers that draw on nature transformation, like water instant body or lightning release body flicker, the D-rank version had low requirements and was easy to learn, making it ideal for Genin and Chuunin. Even some Jonin still used it for its cost-effectiveness. Mu Yue's earlier chakra control drills and physical conditioning had all been groundwork for learning this technique. The core of the body flicker technique is condensing chakra in the soles and legs and strengthening the body with that chakra to achieve high-speed movement. 2 points were crucial. First, the body had to withstand the stimulation from the chakra. Second, the amount of chakra used had to be precisely controlled. If the body couldn't take the stress of accelerated movement, it would sustain damage and fatigue quickly in combat, causing speed to drop. Condensing chakra in the soles is particularly difficult, and controlling output is even harder. Too much chakra wasted is both inefficient and disruptive to execution. So that's why their speed changed so much in sparring, Shiranui Genma thought as he watched those who had stepped forward. Most of them were students who had performed well in practical tests, either graduating Genin or the stronger students still enrolled. I have to learn this quickly, or I won't do well in the final practical exam, Ebisu told himself. After last week's incident, he'd given up on the idea of a carefree academy life and begun planning his ninja future. He didn't want to be eliminated in the first round when the third Hokage came to observe. He wanted to last at least a couple more rounds. After a brief explanation, Mu Yue demonstrated the body flicker technique several times, then set the students to practice while he walked among them, guiding and correcting mistakes. He didn't stay only with Group A. He rotated his main presence among Groups A, B, and C in order, with shadow clones assisting the other groups at the same time. If his main body stayed with one group, the others wouldn't get the full benefit of his instruction. Group B was a step behind Group A. Even after 3 weeks, some of them were still working on chakra control. That fit Mu Yue's expectations. His goal for Group B was simply to finish chakra control training, strengthen their taijutsu, and improve their three-body technique. Achieving those would already make them more capable than many graduating genin, some of whom hadn't even mastered tree climbing, whose three-body technique was only at a learned level, and who had mediocre taijutsu. Completing chakra control gave students 2 extra skills, tree climbing and water walking, and laid a foundation for learning more ninjutsu. Strong taijutsu was never a bad thing, and a proficient three-body technique could have surprising effects in combat. Those still finishing chakra control stuck with those exercises, while those who had completed it focused on taijutsu, the three-body technique, and physical conditioning. With dedicated practice and Mu Yue's instruction, proficiency with the three-body technique increased quickly. Mu Yue noted that some students' clone technique proficiency had already passed 300 points at the introductory level. After spending time with Group B, Mu Yue moved on to Group C. They were the slowest, only recently starting chakra control, a reflection of the group's makeup, lower grade or fourth grade students with average performance. Some had limited previous training time, others hadn't built solid basics, and some simply had less natural talent. Forcing Group C to keep pace with the others would have been counterproductive. Still, after 3 weeks, a few had already been promoted to Group B. The key to tree climbing is finding that subtle amount of chakra that will adhere to the tree, and then maintaining it consistently, Mu Yue explained as he walked up a large tree with effortless ease. It was a lesson he'd given countless times, but the same words mean different things at different stages of training. Heh, Mu Yue-sensei, I should count as having completed my training, right? Anko called, running up the tree and then sprinting across a horizontal branch with ease. Yes, you've completed tree climbing. Next, practice substitution and transformation techniques. In the afternoon, start water walking practice, Mu Yue said with a nod. Anko's talent for ninjutsu was excellent. Her learning speed was among the fastest across all 3 groups. Considering she'd only been training 1 semester, finishing tree climbing so quickly was impressive. Yay! Anko bounced on the branch, then ran over to Izumo Kamizuki and Kotetsu Hagane, who were still cautiously testing the tree, and began giving them pointers. Don't be afraid of falling. Condense chakra in your souls, close your eyes and charge forward, she advised solemnly. Kotetsu's mouth twitched. If he followed Anko's method literally, he'd end up with broken legs and someone else feeding him while he continued to charge ahead with his eyes closed. I was personally praised by Mu Yue-sensei for finishing, so don't be ungrateful, Anko added with a giggle, sweet revenge for the 2 rascals who had tricked her into slacking off earlier. My brother and I have fallen to such a state, Izumo said dramatically to Kotetsu. If only there were a theory exam, Kotetsu muttered. Then that little thief Anko wouldn't be able to brag so much. Motivated by her teasing, both of them trained harder. Mu Yue kept moving among the 3 groups until class ended. Completed 1 major class instruction. Evaluation, reward, wind release, spiraling wind ball, lightning release, chidori. The afternoon rewards were a little disappointing compared to the morning, only a normal level water release and earth release. Still, after 4 hours of class, Mu Yue thought it was a fair return. That night, Mu Yue kept training Obito, Shisui, and Metkai in the breathing technique. None of the 3 had yet felt the signature breathing sensation. They were still stuck in the most basic inhaling and exhaling drills. Remember, it's a skillful breath, Mu Yue kept repeating. It's not just taking a big gulp of air and calling it a breathing technique. Skill, 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 Obito muttered to himself, as if trying to hypnotize the feeling into existence. If you're going to think it quietly. Don't say it out loud, Mu Yue scolded, then poked Obito in the stomach. The jab made Obito wince and suck in a cold, involuntary breath. Obito had never imagined something as natural as breathing would have a technique, and be so difficult. It felt harder than learning fire release, Great Dragon Fire technique, or chakra nature transformation. With the Great Dragon Fire technique, he could at least spit sparks when he failed. With nature transformation, he could at least warm ice a little with his hands. But the breathing technique left him feeling full of wind and somehow empty when he exhaled. He started worrying that he might wind up improving his fire techniques from all the forced inhaling and exhaling without ever actually learning the breathing technique itself. He calmed a bit when he looked over at Shisui and saw the same blankness. If Shisui, talented as he was, couldn't get it, then it must be genuinely difficult. Both Obito and Shisui were practicing flame breathing, and Metkai was tackling the even tougher rock breathing. Mu Yue wasn't overly worried about Guy. The stubborn, rock-like will behind rock breathing fit him perfectly. Metkai only needed to keep at it like he always did. By the second day of training, all 3 still read 0 proficiency. On the evening of the 3rd day, someone finally broke that 0, Obito. Mu Yue-sensei, I think I'm feeling something different. Did I get it? Obito blurted out in the middle of practice. Mu Yue, who had been watching, checked Obito's status with his appraisal skill. Indeed, it was no longer 0. Not fully learned, but you've officially entered breathing technique training, he said. Mu Yue had expected Shisui to be the first to feel it, but Obito had grasped it before him. Mu Yue thought it might be because Obito's temperament fit flame breathing better. Flame breathing suits passionate, energetic people whose hearts burn like fire. Shisui wasn't introverted, but he wasn't a blazing, passionate type either. Good. Hold on to that sensation and explore it more. Once you're fluent with this, we can move to the next stage, Mu Yue instructed. This basic inhale and exhale drill was only the very beginning. The next stage would teach how to guide the breath through specific body postures for different strengthening effects. In the original breathing technique, this stage was connected to the different sword breathing styles. After adaptation, there was no longer a need to hold a sword, so it became a series of different strengthening postures. Beginners needed those rigid postures to guide the breath. Once they internalized them, they could control the breath freely. Finally, the real training starts. Obito punched the air in celebration. After 3 days of getting nothing, he finally had feedback. Mu Yue tapped Obito's head with 2 fingers. Don't disturb others' practice. Get familiar with the feeling. Obito fell quiet and returned to training with a satisfied grin. He noted that Shisui's talent was comparable to Kakashi's, so since Obito had found the feeling before Shisui, it was, in his mind, a small victory over Kakashi. The 3rd day ended with Obito making a little progress, while Shisui and Metkai remained unchanged. On Wednesday, Shisui kept trying every exercise he could think of. It was the first time he had ever felt utterly clueless about something. During a break, he saw Obito and Asuma joking about fire release and went over, asking, "Obito, can you describe that breathing sensation in detail?" Obito thought for a moment, then tried his best to explain. It's like eating a bowl of hot ramen. There's this warm current of air that flows through your whole body. He even used hand gestures to show the flow. A warm current, Shisui murmured, considering the image. Asuma, who'd been listening, couldn't help but feel the exchange was a little ridiculous, especially Obito, who seemed to be talking nonsense. Asuma shrugged it off, seeing Kurenai starting her training and joining her. Shisui couldn't let it go. He kept turning Obito's description over in his mind, hoping for inspiration. He was still thinking about whether to eat ramen at dinner. Later, when Uchiha Tekka asked him, "Shisui, why do my feet sometimes hurt when I use the body flicker technique?" Shisui answered, half absent-mindedly, "You didn't feel that warm current." Even to his own ears that sounded odd, so he quickly clarified, "Probably because you didn't control the chakra in your feet properly, and it stressed them." Tekka blinked. "What were you thinking about earlier? I called you twice before you answered." "Training," Shisui replied. "No wonder even the genin who already graduated can't compare to you," Tekka said with a sigh. "You're always thinking about training." He felt a little embarrassed. This time he had been the weakest Uchiha in the group. There were 3 Uchiha in Group A. Shisui and Obito had been the top 2 in the strength test, and Tekka had been knocked out in the 3rd round. Shisui said nothing. He decided Tekka had misunderstood and let it be. After dinner, he went straight to Mu Yue's to continue practicing. The 4th day passed much like the 3rd, only Obito had any real progress. It wasn't until the 5th day that Shisui finally felt something. His flame breathing gained a bit of proficiency. A warm current like eating hot ramen. Shisui realized Obito's odd metaphor actually fit. He could feel a warm stream of air being inhaled through his mouth and flowing along his chakra pathways. By the end of the 5th day, only Metkai still hadn't found his breathing sensation. He kept at it, diligently searching for that chi-like feeling. 107, Metkai hits hard, 35. 5 more days passed, and Metkai still hadn't felt that elusive sensation. On Wednesday during training, he, Shisui, and Obito met to compare notes on cultivating their respective breathing techniques. "Guy, you can try picturing the feeling of slurping hot ramen, like a rush of heat down into your stomach," Obito offered, trying to pass on what had worked for him. "Take Obito's idea if it helps," Shisui added, "but stick to what teacher Mu Yue taught you. Even though they're both breathing techniques, they're different enough that Mu Yue separated them for a reason." Metkai nodded. Teacher Mu Yue says my progress is normal. Rock breathing is a little tougher than the breathing technique you two are learning. He kept a good attitude. 10 days was nothing. When he learned the clone technique, it had taken him nearly 3 years before he could produce a clone identical to the original capable of action. He hadn't given up then, and he wasn't about to quit now. Even if it took 1,000 days, he would keep training as long as Mu Yue allowed. Persistence would win. He was Mu Yue's prodigy of effort, after all. Heh, then you'd better work hard, guy. Practicals are in 3 days, and I won't go easy on you just because your technique is harder, Obito chuckled. The summer special training was almost over. It would end Friday, and the final practical test would be Saturday. Even a partly mastered breathing technique could boost one's strength. If Obito had the edge in that, Metkai knew he'd be outmatched by raw power. No need for trickery like a camera angle clone technique. Obito would win by force alone. Ha! Youth should be about giving it your all in battle. Metkai flashed his bright white smile and gave Obito a thumbs up. If Obito held back for him, that wouldn't feel like a proper fight. He wanted to go all out. After afternoon training, Metkai returned home to find his father, Mido Dai, laughing as he saw his son drenched in sweat. "Guy, you've worked hard today," he called. "Wait here. I'll go buy some meat and cook for you. You're still growing. You can't skip meat." "Wouldn't cheap vegetables be better? We probably don't have much money left," Metkai blurted. Mido Dai was a genin without a team, and D-rank missions didn't pay well. The family wasn't well off. "That's not your concern, Guy. Focus on your training," Mido Dai said with a smile and a thumbs up, then headed out to buy groceries. Metkai hesitated, then followed. If they couldn't afford meat, he'd step in and suggest cheaper vegetables. They walked to the market and went straight to the butcher. "Boss, how much per catty?" Mido Dai asked. 100 ryo a catty, the butcher answered, lifting his knife. Mido Dai began to haggle. "It's getting late. Meat's not as fresh. 100 is a bit steep." "All right, 97 ryo a catty," the butcher offered. 3 ryo off? That's nothing. I'll check the others, Mido Dai said, turning to leave. Okay, 93, the butcher called after him. "How about 80? Mido Dai countered. 20 ryo off? You're killing me, the butcher complained, but Mido Dai feigned leaving again. "Fine, 80 it is. I can't go lower," the butcher relented. "Then I'll take 40 ryo worth," Mido Dai said triumphantly. "Only 40 ryo?" The butcher paused mid-chop. "I've never seen a ninja so stingy. Ninjas usually buy a few catties, what with all the running around." Mido Dai grinned and gave him a thumbs up. 2 passing ninjas overheard and sneered. "A perpetual genin and stingy to boot," one sniffed. "Nobody would give him a mission," the other added, laughing at Mido Dai's thrift and apparent incompetence. Mido Dai paid them no mind and walked home with the meat. But Metkai, who had been hiding nearby, felt his blood boil. He remembered 3 years ago when he followed his father to the street and was mocked the same way. He had tried to stand up then but got beaten until Kakashi passed by and intervened. He didn't know if he could beat these 2 adult ninjas now, or if Kakashi would show up again, but he couldn't stand by and let them insult the man who'd raised him. Besides, Mido Dai would probably give all that meat to him to eat. How could anyone treat his father like that? Metkai followed the mockers out of the market and onto the street, his face hard. 3 phrases, he said coldly to the pair. The tall, thin ninja spun around, confused at the odd phrasing, and sneered when he saw the boy dressed like his father. "Kid, what's with 3 phrases? You and your old man are a pair of oddballs." The plumper one laughed. "Looks like he's still at ninja school and probably last in his class. A perpetual genin and a dead last son. What a perfect match." "I have a rule," Metkai said, raising a hand. "Anyone who insults my father gets 5 punches. You 2 just didn't stop at 1. You added 2 more insults. That makes 5 insults, which means 5 punches." "Brat, get lost while I'm in a good mood," the tall ninja sneered. 5 punches for 1 insult? Do you even have the strength for that?" Metkai didn't answer with words. He answered with his feet. Leaf whirlwind. Metkai poured his strength into his legs. Chakra flared as he drove out an incredibly fast whirlwind kick. The tall ninja hadn't expected such sudden speed. Caught off guard, he took the kick in the chest and stumbled back several meters. Domin, block that path. Today I'm going to teach him a lesson for his useless old man. The tall ninja snarled through gritted teeth, wincing at the pain in his chest. The slightly chubby ninja, Domin, nodded, flashed past Might Guy, and cut off his retreat. Kid, you like to fight, huh? Let's see how you, some kid who hasn't even graduated, handle 25 punches from a chuunin, the tall ninja said, rubbing his fists as he charged. His fists rained down on Might Guy. Trying to meet him head-on in Taijutsu, Might Guy quickly found himself overpowered. The taller man's reach and experience suppressed him. Punches landed on his face and arms. His normally impressive physique did little against the height advantage and the older ninja's technique. Fortunately, years of physical training let him endure more than most. Still, bang! The slightly chubby ninja moved in from behind. As Might Guy dodged a blow, he got kicked several meters and slammed against a street wall. Have you been drinking too much tea? Why are you so slow at teaching a kid who's still in school? The chubby ninja chuckled. Get out of the way. This kid's weird. He's even more agile than a monkey, the tall ninja snapped, then blurred forward and planted himself before Might Guy. Kid, learn your lesson. Not everyone is as useless as your old man. He grabbed Might Guy by the collar and lifted him off the ground. Now it's 7 phrases, Might Guy muttered. Still with these phrases? You think the punches before weren't enough? The tall ninja felt insulted and raised his fist to strike. Might Guy kicked off the wall to wrench free. The tall ninja lunged to continue the beatdown, but Might Guy's form vanished. Watch out behind you, Domin shouted. The tall ninja spun and swung, right into Might Guy's incoming kick. The strike failed to down him, and Might Guy slipped back a few steps, looking left and right. This was his first time fighting 2 opponents at once, both stronger in raw power. Even pushed beyond his usual limits, 2 fists couldn't match 4 hands. Multiple falls left his clothes dusty. Still, trained in the shave technique, Might Guy could suddenly burst with extreme speed, leaving 2 footprints on the tall man's chest. Huff, huff, he gasped, legs trembling as he dropped to his knees. He'd used shave 5 times already. By the 4th, his legs had ached, but he had kept going. Now they felt completely spent. He can't run anymore, can he? Keep going. Why aren't you avenging your useless old man now? The tall ninja sneered, enraged by Might Guy's continued resistance. He only wanted to beat him senseless. Could the rumors be wrong? This kid isn't a dead last at all, Domin said, surprised. Who cares if he's a dead last? Today we beat him so he knows who not to provoke, the tall ninja growled, clenching his fist. Might Guy watched them close in and felt unwillingness prick at his chest. 2-on-1, dusk settling over the street. Things felt like 3 years ago. He didn't regret standing up to avenge his father. He only regretted not being strong enough to win. If only I'd mastered rock breathing. Mu Yue's demonstration came back to him. Under total concentration breathing, rock breathing made speed, strength, and everything in Taijutsu far more potent. Mu Yue's voice echoed. Rock breathing is like the breath of a steadfast rock, powerful and resilient. Master it, and you can protect what you want, like a rock. Something clicked. Might Guy drew in a deep breath, engaged his abdomen, and exhaled a white mist. His breathing changed completely. The tall ninja kept taunting, but Might Guy ignored him and concentrated on each inhale and exhale. Strength began to build inside him. The exhaustion in his legs eased. He stood steady now. This time he would use the strength of a steadfast rock to protect his father. He can stand? The tall ninja was surprised. He'd seen Might Guy's legs shaking moments before, but he still underestimated him. Rock breathing, total concentration breathing, leaf-strong whirlwind, Might Guy cried. He inhaled, filling every cell, and felt power flood through him. Using shave, he suddenly appeared beside the tall ninja and unleashed a spinning kick. The tall ninja only realized something had vanished, and then a foot slammed into his chest. Bang! He crashed into the wall with a dull thud, consciousness fading. How is this possible? That eternal Genin's son is this strong? That was the tall ninja's last thought. Domin's jaw dropped. He barely had time to react before Might Guy sent him smashing into the wall with a leaf-great whirlwind. That's 8 phrases in total, Might Guy said, stepping in front of the 2 fallen foes. Then he began to punch, counting each strike. He broke the breathing technique state after 5 punches, but he forced his weary body to keep going until he had thrown all 40 punches, not one missing. "Guy, you've gotten much stronger," Kakashi said as he appeared. Kakashi had been wandering nearby when he happened upon the end of the fight. By the time he arrived, Guy was already half kneeling on the ground. Before Kakashi could step in, Guy suddenly erupted with another surge of power and took both opponents down in an instant. Kakashi stared, baffled. That final burst shouldn't have been possible. Guy ought to have been exhausted. Now he understood what his father had meant. Might Guy truly was becoming a dangerous rival, perhaps even one day surpassing him. "Of course, because I'm a hard-working genius recognized by Teacher Mu Yue," Guy crowed, flashing that absurdly bright smile and those 2 rows of gleaming white teeth. Then his body sagged backward. The last explosion of energy had drained him. Kakashi caught him quickly. "Next time, save enough to walk home, or your father'll worry," Kakashi muttered, shouldering him and heading toward Guy's house. "Ha-ha, isn't that what friends are for?" Guy laughed, content. "I can't always be there," Kakashi replied, deadpan. He left Guy at his doorstep, watched Mido Dai usher his son inside, then turned away. Guy's performance had surprised him. How did those last 2 kicks explode with so much force when Guy should have been spent? Kakashi still couldn't figure it out. On the way home, he ran into 2 teammates who'd been looking for him. He only nodded and kept walking. "He's so cold. You'd think he owed him money?" One of them griped. "Never shows for group training. Never practices teamwork, but he sure shows up for missions." "Who told him he's some genius ninja?" the other sniffed. "Let's not puff him up." Despite being physically exhausted, Guy still went to see Mu Yue after dinner. He went every day. He thought if he didn't, Mu Yue might worry, and he needed to report what had happened with the breathing technique. "Teacher Mu Yue," he said, trying to play down his fatigue, "when I was fighting earlier, I suddenly slipped into a state where my strength and speed surged. My legs that were worn out just filled with power again." Mu Yue activated the appraisal to check Guy's rock breathing proficiency. Skill, rock breathing, not mastered, 17,100. Mu Yue's eyebrows shot up. Yesterday, Guy's proficiency had been 0. Today it had jumped to 17. Obito held the highest score yesterday with 6 points. Guy had nearly tripled that overnight. Mu Yue considered Guy's account. The situation must have been critical, Mu Yue thought, and Guy's mindset had matched the rock breathing perfectly. That alignment had stimulated latent potential and allowed him to comprehend what Mu Yue had been teaching. The sudden comprehension explained the dramatic leap. "Don't train today," Mu Yue told him. "Sit and watch Obito and the others for a while." Guy accepted the rest without protest. While Mu Yue continued teaching Obito and Shisui, he broke the news to them. "Guy's breathing progress is now first," Mu Yue announced. "He can already strengthen himself using the breathing technique. Wasn't he without chakra sense yesterday? How could he improve so much in one day?" Obito demanded. He knew how difficult breathing training was, and Mu Yue had said rock breathing was harder than the flame breathing Obito was practicing. The rapid jump felt impossible. He suspected cheating. "Work hard, and you'll have your moments of rapid progress too," Mu Yue replied, smiling. Obito had good talent with flame breathing. If not for Guy's sudden enlightenment, Obito probably would have stayed ahead and might be the first to master the technique. Enlightenment wasn't guaranteed. It came rarely. Given rock breathing's difficulty, Guy would normally only raise his score gradually through steady practice. Still, breaking through 0 mattered. It opened the door. Hearing the news, Obito felt pressure tighten around him. Aside from today, only 2 days remained until the final test. He had thought his top 2 position safe. Now it looked uncertain. Mu Yue caught Obito clasping his hands together in a silent plea for fast progress, and yanked them apart. Embarrassed, Obito returned to training, repeating the breathing patterns and searching for even the smallest change in his body. Thursday's class began as usual, but with the special training period nearing its end, Mu Yue started each session with a pep talk. There were just 2 days left, and the third Hokage would be watching the upcoming combat test. Mu Yue wanted everyone to squeeze out every last bit of effort. Most of Mu Yue's training goals were already met. Group A had largely mastered the body flicker technique. Whether they used it well depended on the individual, but the basics were there. Group B had finished tree climbing and water walking practice. Their chakra control had improved dramatically, and their three-body technique skills had also advanced. The initial Group B members had seen their average ninjutsu scores climb from around 7 to over 9. Many lower-grade students had also improved rapidly over the 5 weeks. Once school resumed, they would surprise their classmates. There are only 2 days left, Mu Yue reminded them. Train hard. Make the third Hokage see the results of your effort. It's finally time to make a name for ourselves, Kotetsu Hagane said to Izumo Kamizuki, and they turned back to studying ninjutsu with renewed focus. If I do well, is there dango? Anko asked eagerly, thinking only of a snack reward. I really don't know what's so exciting about an old geezer coming, Asuma grumbled, clearly unenthusiastic. Among the 300 students, many might be indifferent to the third Hokage's visit. Asuma was probably the only one openly displeased. Shisui, meanwhile, replayed the historical lessons Mu Yue had taught him, quietly turning them over in his mind as training continued. 110. Bundle practice. 15. Teacher Mu Yue, I feel a strange swelling in my stomach. Could it be that my posture is finally perfect and the air is already circulating through my meridians? Obito asked, eyes bright with excitement. You probably just ate too much, Mu Yue replied, glancing over and noticing that Obito's posture had slipped again during the slow breathing exercise. Maybe I did eat a little too much, Obito admitted, his cheeks flushing as he patted his slightly rounded belly with an embarrassed smile. Shisui, standing nearby, couldn't help himself and burst out laughing, instantly breaking his breathing rhythm. You need to guide the air that enters your body, not let the inhaled air change your posture, Mu Yue said, helping Obito correct his stance, hands adjusting him precisely. He pointed at Shisui, who had recovered and resumed his posture. Shisui is doing well in this part, Mu Yue added. Although Shisui's overall progress lagged behind Obito's, in this particular phase of training, he was a bit faster. Teacher Mu Yue, why don't you tie me down? I think I could guide the air better if I couldn't move, Obito said, a flash of inspiration in his eyes. The strengthening movements of the breathing technique were getting harder. Not only did air currents exert influence, but holding difficult stances for long stretches exhausted the body. Mu Yue wasn't sure whether Obito earnestly wanted to train or had developed some odd fetish for being restrained. He had considered the idea himself, but physical restraint could be ineffective and would definitely be uncomfortable, borderline inhumane. Someone who didn't know it was breathing technique training might mistake it for an interrogation. It might work, but you'll be very uncomfortable, Mu Yue warned. Are you sure? Obito nodded. He wanted to see if a clever trick could speed his progress. The special training lasted only 5 weeks. Although they'd been told there would be strength tests every 2 weeks, the final practical exam would come 3 weeks after the previous one, so every advantage mattered. Obito had finally managed to beat Metkai once, and was eager to keep momentum. He didn't want Guy to leap ahead again. In the school's practical exams, Metkai had beaten him 4 times total, while Obito had only 1 win. Mu Yue relented and found several wooden boards and ropes. He tied Obito to the boards in a fixed posture, but not too tightly. Excessive restraint would impede circulation. These ropes aren't meant to be tight. They're only an aid, he cautioned. You still have to guide the technique yourself. Don't think that being fixed means you can just breathe and do nothing. Obito nodded and dove into the breathing technique with renewed focus. It felt odd to be restrained, but useful. Whenever his posture started to slip, he could touch the slack in the rope and immediately notice the error, correcting himself. For each movement, Mu Yue's shadow clone adjusted him. After an hour of concentrated practice, Obito felt he'd improved noticeably. As the training session neared its end, Mu Yue called Metkai over to join Shisui and Obito. Guy, use the breathing technique, then apply Taijutsu, Mu Yue instructed. Metkai nodded and matched his breath to the technique, drawing in a deep rush of oxygen to strengthen himself. Leaf Great Whirlwind, he shouted. He targeted the thickest tree nearby, one that 3 people couldn't encircle, and with a surge of chakra, he body flickered and kicked. Crack! The huge tree split and toppled, and the ground where he struck was shredded. His speed and strength have improved so much, Obito exclaimed. Metkai whirlwind kick had really felt like it cut through the air, flattening the grass around them. You two are just one more step away from being able to use the breathing technique in actual combat, Mu Yue told Shisui and Obito with a smile. The technique was difficult to master, but there was reason for hope now that Guy had set the benchmark. One more thing, Mu Yue added. At this e-practical test the day after tomorrow, none of you are to use the breathing technique. Why? Obito asked, surprised. Only Metkai could reliably use it in battle right now. Wouldn't banning it hamstring Guy's advantage? It seemed strange to equalize a contest by forbidding a technique. You've only just started training. You can't control it reliably yet, Mu Yue explained. Using the breathing technique in combat can easily lead to overexertion and hidden injuries. There was also another concern. Hiruzen would be coming to watch the exam. Hiruzen was unmatched in his knowledge of ninjutsu, taijutsu, and secret techniques. Sudden, extreme displays from young, unrefined students could expose dangerous flaws. If more than one student used the technique and something went wrong, it would attract unwanted attention. So Mu Yue forbade it for safety and discretion. Shisui's technique, by contrast, was acceptable. Although his movements were faster, they resembled ordinary taijutsu or the body flicker enough not to raise suspicion. Given that Obito and the others already had quick body flicker techniques, it all appeared reasonable. After I used the breathing technique the other day, I thought my legs had recovered, Metkai admitted, but when I stopped maintaining it, the fatigue hit all at once. Mu Yue's caution was justified. Obito's expression shifted. He understood at last. Saturday arrived, and all the students gathered on the training ground for the final practical exam. True to his word, Hiruzen Sarutobi came, and he didn't come alone. Several other teachers accompanied him, having been invited by Hiruzen and Mu Yue to observe this special training model during the exam day. The students looked confident and in high spirits, Hiruzen said with a bright smile, wearing his white robe and the Hokage hat. Let's see the results of their hard work these past 5 weeks. 1 of them. Make a name for yourself. Third Hokage-sama. Hokage-sama. Group C had just finished drawing lots when Hiruzen Sarutobi arrived. One by one, the students greeted him. Just act as you normally would. I'm only here to observe, Hiruzen said with a benevolent smile. Number 1, Anko Mitarashi, and number 2, Asakawa Mikan, prepare to begin your battle, Mu Yue's shadow clone announced as he presided over the examination. The called students quickly stepped onto the field, took their stances, and readied themselves. Hiruzen glanced around. The 3 group test areas had been placed far apart to avoid interference. Mu Yue, you've worked hard these past 5 weeks, leading over 300 students by yourself, Hiruzen said with a hint of fatigue and admiration. In a situation like this, one person simply wasn't enough. Mu Yue had to use a shadow clone. Sure enough, Mu Yue's original body stood beside Hiruzen while his clone conducted the test. It's my duty, Mu Yue replied with a modest smile. Their attention turned to the match already underway. Although Asakawa Mikan was a 4th grade student and Anko was at a height disadvantage, she showed no fear and charged him immediately, forcing close quarters combat. Anko's taijutsu was aggressive and uncompromising. She would take hits if it meant her opponent would take more. Under so many watchful eyes, Asakawa Mikan was quietly struggling. He used the momentum of Anko's attack to spring back to a tree, then sprinted up and rained shuriken down, trying to keep her at range. But Anko was unshaken. Having finished tree climbing training long ago, she was used to fighting in the trees and soon closed the gap. The two clashed among the branches, exchanging feints and strikes. Clone technique, transformation technique, and substitution technique, the 3 basic ninjutsu, were employed by both. Mu Yue, this Anko Mitarashi is a student in your class, isn't she? Hiruzen asked suddenly. He had been impressed by Mu Yue's class performance and had a general impression of the top students. Yes, she's in class 1, 1st grade, Mu Yue confirmed. To have that level of chakra control and nutsu at 1st grade, she's very talented, Hiruzen observed, stroking his goatee. He was pleased with Mu Yue's results. The student's performance was impressive, especially considering this was Group C, the slowest group. With that strength, even ordinary 3rd and 4th grade students might struggle to match her, one chuunin teacher murmured. Her opponent is good too. If he trains a little more, he could reach graduation level, Hiruzen added, and the other chuunin teachers nodded. One teacher, Ikigaya Yu, looked surprised because Asakawa Mikan was his student. He remembered Mikan as rather ordinary and hadn't expected such progress after only 5 weeks of special training. Whether from sudden effort or Mu Yue's instruction, he couldn't say. In the end, Anko's relentlessness won out. Anko Mitarashi wins, the announcer declared. Next, Mu Yue called the next match. Number 3, Kotetsu Hagane, and number 4, Nakamori Goichi, prepared to begin. Nakamori Goichi, that's my student, Ikigaya said. How are his usual scores? Hiruzen asked. Rather ordinary, around 15 points, Ikigaya admitted, but his opponent looks like a 1st or 2nd grade, so there shouldn't be a problem, right? Hiruzen nodded. 15 points was a very average score by the ninja school's standards. Before Mu Yue could reply, Ueda Aya interjected. Not necessarily. Kotetsu is also in Mu Yue's class, and his combat scores are quite good. As the bystanders discussed, the match began. Nakamori, using his physical advantage, charged and launched a flurry of heavy attacks. Kotetsu, small but flexible, dodged agilely. For a time the fight reached a tense stalemate. If nothing unexpected happens, Nakamori ought to win, a chuunin speculated. Kotetsu was at a disadvantage in stamina and strength. If the exchange dragged on, he would likely be caught. This student is good too, Hiruzen said, puffing his IPA. Not as strong as some of his classmates, but still very capable. After all, this was a cross-grade match. Putting up a fight was already commendable. Then Kotetsu seized a breath and used his trump card. Enemy confusion technique. To amplify his ninjutsu, Kotetsu had even gone into town and visited a women's clothing shop beforehand. Immediately, 6 older sisters in various revealing outfits materialized on the field, surrounding Nakamori. Nakamori's gaze was drawn as if by an unseen force. Seizing the moment, Kotetsu kicked him to the ground and pressed his kunai against Nakamori's body. Kotetsu Hagane wins! The onlookers froze. Nakamori, coming to his senses, stared in bewilderment and shock. He'd known about Kotetsu's technique, but hadn't expected him to use such a risque jutsu with the 3rd Hokage watching. Silence fell across the field. No one moved. Then the 3rd Hokage coughed, breaking the stillness. He had been so engrossed he'd choked on his pipe smoke. He quickly wiped a smear of red from under his nose and, regaining his composure, said with a serious expression, Teacher Mu Yue's special training is paying off. Kotetsu used his strengths cleverly, and Nakamori fought well too. How many points should he get for this practical combat? 24, I'd say, a chuunin teacher offered first. Others called out similar scores. No one mentioned Kotetsu's technique directly. They tacitly brushed past the brazenness, and instead praised Mu Yue's summer training and the students' progress. Still, a few sneaked glances at Kotetsu and thought, what a talent! Kotetsu, you're really going to make a name for yourself now, Izumo said with a hint of envy, looking at the victorious boy. To use ninjutsu flexibly and beat a stronger opponent under the 3rd Hokage's gaze, he wished he were the one up there. Number 5, Ishii Yoshi, and number 6, Izumo Kamizuki, prepare. Hearing his name, Izumo hurried to the stage. He, too, wanted to make a name for himself. Chapter 112, Shocking Teaching Results. 35. Izumo Kamizuki stepped forward quickly to meet Kotetsu Hagane as he returned from the match. The two exchanged a grin and bumped fists lightly. Izumo, I did it. Now it's your turn, Kotetsu said, his face shining with pride. He still couldn't help cheering inwardly as he recalled the fight. As a first-grade student, he had managed to defeat a 4th-grade opponent, finding and seizing a single decisive opening despite the disadvantage. It felt like a real ninja victory. Kotetsu was certain the 3rd Hokage would remember the name Kotetsu Hagane. He only regretted one thing. It's a shame I couldn't spread the word about Ebisu ni-san, he thought. Ebisu's repeated advice had made Kotetsu act differently this time than he had before. Ebisu had quietly led them in developing the technique, but he was modest to the point of hiding his strength from others. Hiruzen Sarutobi, watching Izumo's fight, was beginning to form a clear view of the effects of the special training. He'd seen enough to know the students had improved dramatically. Those who had once scored 15 points could now hit around 24. First-grade students like Kotetsu were showing the strength to stand toe-to-toe with higher-grade opponents. Leaving aside a curiosity about one particular ninjutsu, Kotetsu's overall performance far exceeded what a first grade would normally show. Izumo displayed similar capability in the match. The student's strength has improved significantly during this special training, Hiruzen thought. Scores had already hinted at progress, but practical combat carried subjective elements. He preferred to see the changes himself. Enemy confusion technique, someone called on the field. Several alluring older sister illusions appeared out of nowhere, moving in suggestive ways that drew the opponent's attention. Izumo used the distraction and finished him off. Hiruzen felt a sudden tickle in his nose and realized this strength test held surprises for every sense. Mu Yue-sensei, your students are quite creative, Ikeyu said after some thought, blushing as he tried to find an appropriate compliment. He couldn't help but support the teacher, having often stood in for him. Kotetsu and Izumo are like that, Mu Yue replied with a smile. Kotetsu drifted close to Mu Yue and spoke up. Mu Yue-sensei, that ninjutsu was developed by Izumo, Ebisuni-san, and me. Actually, Ebisuni-san led us on it. Kotetsu made sure to raise his voice. He wouldn't let Ebisu's key role go unrecognized. Tanaka-sensei, Ebisu is a student in your class, right? I remember his grades being quite good, someone asked. Yes, he's in my 4th grade class 6, Tanaka answered with a slightly embarrassed smile. He hadn't expected that an odd ninjutsu like that would be connected to one of his better students. He remembered Ebisu as a serious, steady sort. Ebisu. Hiruzen also heard Kotetsu's name and filed it away. After saying his piece, Kotetsu slipped back to the group almost like a hero who leaves quietly after completing his task. Kotetsu, how did I do? Izumo asked, eager. Very strong. I saw Hokage-sama watching very seriously, Kotetsu said, putting an arm around Izumo's shoulders. That's great. Now our brothers are really on the path to making a name for ourselves. Izumo pumped a fist in the air. It wasn't just us. Ebisu-Nisan too, Kotetsu said proudly, describing their maneuver. Words can't describe it. If Ebisu-Nisan hears about it, he'll probably treat us to a meal. Izumo exclaimed and gave Kotetsu a thumbs up. Sneaking into the teacher's group had taken guts. We'll tell Ebisuni-san after the test, Kotetsu said excitedly. Meanwhile, Ebisu, waiting for his own match in Group A, felt a sudden tickle in his nose and sneezed, a small, inexplicable foreboding settling over him. He shook it off and focused on performing well in front of the Hokage. After a couple more fights, the other Chuunin sensei also realized this wasn't a fluke. The improvements were widespread. How are they being taught? Only 5 weeks, and they've improved this much. Do they practice every day without distraction? One teacher wondered aloud. Many had heard of Mu Yue's teaching prowess, but most assumed that no matter how good the instruction, combat results still depended on innate talent. Yet the progress before them was undeniable. Students who had once seemed average or worse now fought at a high level after a little more than a month of intensive training. Let's go observe the other groups, Hiruzen said after the 5th match. 10 students had fought. He already had a solid impression of the group's overall level. This way to Group B, Mu Yue said, and led Hiruzen and the others to the river testing area. As they arrived, 2 students clashed on the water's surface. Group B students have already completed chakra control training. They handle tree climbing and walking on water just fine. Their taijutsu and ninjutsu are progressing faster than Group C's, Mu Yue explained. All of them can walk on water? A skeptical Chuunin sensei asked. Tree climbing was an ability many excellent 4th grade students could perform, but water walking demanded far finer chakra control, something even many genin lacked. As they scanned the area, they saw that the number of students in Group B was comparable to Group C's, and nearly all of them were fighting on the river, moving confidently on the surface. The sight forced the skeptical teacher to accept the truth. These students are definitely ready to graduate straight to genin, one remarked. Group B's proficiency gave the impression they could pass graduation standards easily. With this level of clone technique, they'd earn full marks on the graduation exam, another agreed. Some teachers even found their own pupils among the group and felt a pang of self-doubt. This kid wasn't that strong before. How'd he get so much better? For a moment, They weren't sure whether they'd underestimated their students or been misled by appearances. But the performance was real, and seeing Group B's excellence raised Hiruzen's expectations for Group A. "This way to Group A," Mu Yue said, and led the party on. Mu Yue explained the level of the Group A students as they walked. By the second week of special training, most of the Group A students had already completed their chakra control exercises. The special training focused on tightening their chakra control, learning the body flicker technique, and improving both taijutsu and ninjutsu. Group A progresses the fastest, and its members are the strongest among all groups. It's mostly made up of 4th grade students and graduated genin, with some 3rd and even 1st grades mixed in. 1st grade students? How could a 1st grade reach that level? A teacher asked, incredulous. With chakra control good enough to walk on water or climb trees, plus mastery of the body flicker technique, they'd be strong even among genin. It seemed impossible for a 1st grade to be that advanced. That 1st grade must be Uchiha Shisui from your class, Teacher Mu Yue. If it's him, then maybe it is possible, Ueda Aya said. Aside from Shisui, she couldn't think of any 1st grade who could be so capable. Mu Yue nodded. Shisui's reputation as a genius at the ninja school was well known, but some chuunin teachers still thought a 1st grade couldn't reach Group A's standard. Forget the top of 1st grade. They didn't even think the best of 2nd grade could do it. Had Mu Yue not had a good reputation and connections, some might have accused him of favoritism for transferring Shisui directly into Group A. Hiruzen Sarutobi only smiled and said nothing. He didn't know exactly how strong Shisui had become, but the match where Shisui had beaten Asuma told him enough to justify Shisui's place. Number 17, Uchiha Shisui, and number 18, Raido Namiyashi, prepare for battle. Mu Yue and the others arrived just in time to see the fight begin. It's Raido. I taught him before he graduated. An excellent student, the teacher who had doubted the 1st grade said with a proud smile. Seeing a former pupil display his skill before the Hokage was a rare chance. He knew Raido's strength. He had been solid at the academy and had been training steadily after graduation. Facing a 1st grade should be easy. Raido Namiyashi, though, felt a knot in his stomach when he heard his opponent's name. He had no confidence in beating Shisui. He wasn't going to give up outright. If he was going to lose, at least he could try to do so with dignity. He took a breath, walked to the battleground, and formed the hand seals to face Shisui. Look at Raido's calm expression. He seems confident, the chuunin teacher remarked, pride swelling in him. Most teachers trusted Mu Yue's judgment but doubted Shisui could beat Raido. One was a freshly promoted 1st grade, the other an experienced graduated genin who had undergone the same special training. Raido should win. Even if Kakashi, who had only just finished a semester, had faced him, they still thought Raido would come out on top. Mu Yue simply smiled and stayed silent. Shisui's performance would be the proof. Begin. Raido immediately used body flicker technique, dashing in and thrusting a kunai toward Shisui. He knew Shisui's reputation. There was no reason to test him. Go all out. Raido never knows how to hold back when he attacks, the chuunin teacher muttered, watching Raido's straightforward charge. Then something unexpected happened. At the last instant, Shisui's body seemed to vanish, and Raido's kunai hit only air. Not discouraged, Raido threw a kunai behind him on instinct. Shisui slipped aside and narrowly avoided it. His speed's even greater than Raido's, the teacher exclaimed, stunned. Raido grabbed a handful of shuriken and threw them, forming 4 shadow clones through clone technique. The clones and the real Raido climbed the trees, switching positions rapidly. Fire release, Phoenix Sage Flower Claw Crimson. Shisui dodged the shuriken and began his jutsu. He exhaled a blast of fire and flung shuriken into the inferno. The flaming shuriken streaked like small fireballs toward the trees where Raido had taken refuge. With 2 loud impacts, the trees were torn apart, the clones dissipated, and the main body fell to the ground, largely unhurt but dislodged. Is this a 1st grade? Several chuunin teachers whispered, dumbfounded by the destructive power of Shisui's fire technique. Even a graduated genin rarely pulled off something like that. Raido still has a chance. Ninjutsu isn't everything. Taijutsu matters too, Raido's former teacher insisted. Shisui's ninjutsu was powerful, but surely his taijutsu couldn't be equally developed at such a young age. Raido's strength was in close combat, after all. Shisui didn't cast any more ninjutsu. He charged the fallen Raido instead. Raido scrambled up and met him in close quarters. Though Raido was taller and sturdier, the teachers watched in astonishment as Shisui pressed the attack. His speed and precision overwhelmed Raido, forcing him back. The teacher pinched the bridge of his nose and blinked, convinced at last that he hadn't imagined it. "Uchiha Shisui wins," Mu Yue announced. Raido couldn't withstand Shisui's intense assault and was defeated. The teachers fell into stunned silence, their faces marked by disbelief. A first grade with this level of skill? It seemed impossible, unless he had trained from the moment he could walk. "Shisui is the most diligent student in Class 1, Mu Yue said evenly. While most students only switched to full-day training during the special training period, Shisui had already been training all day in the South Border Forest for quite some time. During the special training, he trained through the day and would come to Mu Yue's at night for extra sessions. Everyone should learn from Mu Yue, create a few more teaching miracles," the third Hokage joked, glancing at the teachers' shocked faces. Number 19, Asuma Sarutobi, and number 20, Uchiha Obito, prepare for battle. Ikeyu finally spotted the standout student in his class and smiled. "Obito is in my class. He's very strong. Even before the special training, he was already the second-ranked student in the 4th grade. After teacher Mu Yue's training, I can't wait to see how much he's improved. I've seen Uchiha Obito fight. He's definitely talented," another teacher agreed. But his opponent is even tougher. Although Asuma graduated as a genin only this year, he's basically held first place in his grade for years. Kimura Sugito, who had watched Obito rise from the bottom, still didn't expect much for him. Asuma was the third Hokage's son, after all. Obito had taken second, but Asuma had been first for years. Ikeyu nodded in agreement. On paper, Asuma looked more likely to win. The teachers who had taught Asuma began praising him, comparing him favorably to Shisui and Kakashi. The third Hokage kept a pleasant smile, but he wasn't impressed by the flattery. He knew his son's level. Asuma was good, but comparing him to Shisui and Kakashi was pushing it. He turned his attention back to the match. "Obito, how are you feeling today?" Asuma asked as they formed the confrontation seal. "Pretty good, slept well, and don't think I'll go easy on you just because your father is watching," Obito replied, forming a hand sign. "And who asked you to go easy?" Asuma said. "Use your full strength." Even if the win would be difficult, fighting Obito would let him measure his own growth. They were similar fighters now, both competent with fire release and taijutsu. The last time Asuma had lost to Obito, it had been due to carelessness. He hadn't expected Obito's taijutsu to improve. Both boys knew that. "Begin!" Mu Yue shouted. Whoosh! They vanished from their starting points with the body flicker technique, leaving piles of shuriken behind as decoys. The shuriken missed, and the two reappeared, closing instantly for close-quarters combat. The exchange was rapid and hard to read for a while. Neither yielded. Hiruzen Sarutobi watched closely and nodded inwardly. Asuma's taijutsu had improved considerably. He finally looked like a proper shinobi. Kimura Sugito's surprise grew as well. In the last grade exam, Obito had only shown quick movement. Now his close combat skills had clearly advanced. Then something even more surprising happened. Asuma began to lose ground. The technique Obito relied on, called the shave, moved faster than an ordinary body flicker. Any slight opening, and Obito seized it. Mu Yue's training showed. The localized shave in Hokage was an excellent variation on body flicker. Its drawbacks, high chakra cost and greater fatigue, were not faults of the technique so much as of the user. If the body could handle it, those weaknesses didn't matter. Luckily, Asuma's combat experience kept Obito from running away with it. When taijutsu couldn't decide the fight, they exchanged a final kick, broke apart, and raced into hand seals. Fire release, great fireball technique. Obito spat a vast ball of flame. Fire release, great flame technique. Asuma answered with an equally fierce blast. The two streams of fire met, each trying to swallow the other. Obito's fireball proved superior, pushing Asuma back. Asuma strained to gather chakra, but couldn't neutralize the great fireball. He had to dodge. That was the opening Obito needed. While Asuma evaded the flames, Obito used the shave again, faster than before, to close and strike. "He's lost," Hiruzen said softly. Asuma had made a series of avoidable mistakes. When outpaced, he should have stopped clashing and thought of a counter, not stubbornly kept meeting Obito blow for blow. Choosing a direct fire release clash with Obito's Great Fireball was a critical error. If Hiruzen had Asuma's current body and skill, he could name 100 ways to defeat Obito. Still, he couldn't ignore Asuma's progress. This Asuma would have been beaten much earlier than the old one. Asuma tried to hang on, but Obito's rapid offense was decisive. Uchiha Obito wins. The teachers were stunned and a little embarrassed. They had just been praising Asuma. Now he'd been beaten by a current student. It felt like a slap in the face. Uchiha Obito is very good. If he keeps this up, he could become an outstanding ninja, the third Hokage said with a smile. The third Hokage's right. I have high hopes for Obito, Ikeyu added confidently. Number 21, Ebisu, and number 22, Shiranui Genma, prepare for battle. At the name Ebisu, the teachers all remembered the unforgettable scene from Group C. Isn't he the most creative student? One chuunin teacher joked to the homeroom teacher of 4th grade, Class 6. The third Hokage's interest was piqued. He wanted to see what made Ebisu's fight so unusual. Ebisu noticed the crowd and felt a thrill. A good showing now would make his path as a shinobi much easier. Though he wasn't as strong as Shiranui Genma, Ebisu had thrown everything he had into his display before and lost narrowly. Many teachers had been disappointed, not because the match lacked excitement, but because it didn't match their expectations. The homeroom teacher of Class 6 had even quietly left the teacher's group, wore a dark expression, and found Ebisu to give him a harsh scolding. Ebisu felt confused. He had lost, but he thought his performance had been reasonable. Besides, Genma had been someone he often came up short against, so this result wasn't entirely unexpected. The third Hokage and the other teachers stayed at the training ground until all the matches finished. They lingered a little longer in Group A and then moved on to watch the other groups. The more they watched, the more astonished they became. Many of the specially trained students were those they had taught, and after a little over a month, some of the strongest felt almost unrecognizable. What did you all think of the summer special training Mugetsu organized? Hiruzen Sarutobi asked with a smile, stroking his goatee as he addressed the chuunin instructors who had come to observe the final test. It's incredible. The students improved more in a month than they usually do in an entire semester, Ikeyu replied, emotion in his voice. His praise wasn't just because he was on good terms with Mugetsu. He genuinely thought the program was remarkable. As the homeroom teacher for Class 2, Grade 4, his students were spread across Groups A, B, and C. Remembering how they'd performed before the special training, he found their progress almost unbelievable. Ordinary kids like Nakamori Goichi had risen to competent levels. The already good students had become excellent. Every single student had gotten better. This kind of training suits 4th graders about to graduate, Kimura Sugito added after a moment. If we ran more sessions like this, Konoha's genin would be even sharper. Improving the genin's baseline matters. Better genin can take higher reward missions, gain tougher experience, and a virtuous cycle of training and mission quality begins. Even Raido Namiyashi's teacher had started praising Mugetsu's teaching after seeing the results. The numbers didn't lie. Anyone with eyes could see what Mugetsu had accomplished in 1 month. I only taught as best I could. The real credit goes to the students' hard work, Mugetsu said with a gentle smile. Special training is a lot tougher than normal classes. 8 hours of practice every day. The kids had to persevere. He refused to take all the credit. The students had earned their progress. You surprised me, Hiruzen said, smiling. Their improvement is obvious. Your summer program sets a great example and shows a new direction for strengthening graduating genin. Given Hayate Mugetsu's teaching ability, outstanding performance, and extreme diligence, he is hereby promoted to Special Jonin. Hiruzen announced warmly. He handed Mugetsu a scroll, patted his shoulder, and continued more formally. Jonin Mugetsu, continue to cultivate Konoha's next generation. The village's future depends on our young people. The promotion had actually been agreed upon in advance. If Mugetsu's special training produced results, Hiruzen planned to promote him. On paper, promotions to Jonin or Special Jonin are difficult, requiring mission achievement, special skills, or superhuman strength. But Hiruzen, with decades as Hokage, had the authority to make such decisions when it served Konoha. Promoting Mugetsu publicly would not only reward him, but encourage other chuunin to strive harder. Thank you, third Hokage-sama. I will devote myself to training even stronger shinobi for Konoha, Mugetsu said. Accepting the scroll with both hands, he felt the gratitude he owed the assembled teachers and students and gave the ceremony the proper deference. Jonin. Ikeya's eyes widened with envy. Even as a special jonin, Mugetsu had a high standing. He could attend jonin meetings and be part of important discussions. Most other school teachers were chuunin. Only a couple held jonin ranks. Seeing someone several years younger and newly appointed as a teacher rise so quickly made Ikeya wistful. Maybe it would even help him in his romantic pursuits. Ueda Aya was equally surprised. With Mugetsu's capability, promotion had been inevitable, but she hadn't expected it so soon. The chuunin teachers looked at him with admiration and envy, but it was justified. Mugetsu had delivered real results they couldn't confidently claim they could match. Hiruzen watched those expressions and smiled inwardly. Promoting Mugetsu publicly would reinforce the idea that the Hokage recognized real merit, motivating others to emulate that excellence. Little preparation, many benefits. Why are the students gathered over there? One teacher asked. My shadow clone finished compiling the results and posted them, Mugetsu explained. The last thing is to compare these final scores with their baseline tests so students can see their progress directly. Apart from the specially assembled Group A, Groups B and C had followed the grade standards consistently. Let's look at their improvements, Hiruzen suggested, leading the way. Mugetsu followed with a sincere smile. This time it wasn't the polite smile he'd shown during the promotion, but one born of satisfaction. The system rewards for his effort had arrived, and they were far better than he'd expected. A notification popped up in his mind. Under your guidance, summer special training participants improved in ninjutsu and taijutsu. Overall strength increased. Reward received, Chakras 800, Skill Proficiency Scroll, Combination Ninjutsu, Proficient Level. All useful. More chakra was always welcome. The Skill Proficiency Scroll could refine a jutsu or help master a difficult technique. Combination Ninjutsu would boost Mugetsu's damage output, given his repertoire of techniques. More notifications followed. Disciple Uchiha Shisui trained diligently and achieved perfect results. Chakra plus 200. Disciple Uchiha Obito trained diligently and achieved excellent results. Chakra 150. Disciple Metkai trained diligently and achieved excellent results. Chakra 150. Another 500 chakra. Mugetsu frowned at the system's odd behavior. His own exam had clearly triggered rewards, but there were conditions he didn't understand, an interval, or the degree of student improvement. He couldn't be sure. Farming exams every few days probably wouldn't work, but he wasn't about to complain about the gains. With this settlement, he'd gained a total of 1,300 chakra. He checked his panel. Name, Hayate Mugetsu, chakra 15,300. Mugetsu's total chakra equaled roughly 6 Kakashis. The summer special training had been incredibly productive. In just over a month, his chakra had risen by 3,250 points, without even counting training mission rewards or newly acquired jutsu. The increase came from many sources: settlement bonuses from improvements and exams, class rewards, returns from disciples, chakra returned by disciples' training, and even an uptick in his natural chakra growth. Since mastering rock breathing to a proficient level and with the constant state's boost, his physique had strengthened. His physical and spiritual energies, the components of chakra, were increasing. He estimated a breakthrough to 20,000 before the next semester ended was possible. The students were comparing results by the time Mugetsu arrived. You jumped from 12 to 23. From 15 to 25, they exclaimed. Seeing their own numbers, they were buoyant. Mugetsu gathered them for a final word. Are you satisfied with your scores? He asked with a smile. Satisfied, they answered in chorus. I didn't expect this much progress in just 5 weeks. Jonin Mugetsu, you're amazing. I didn't know getting stronger could be this simple. Their voices varied, but the meaning was the same: gratitude and pride. Mugetsu's tone grew serious. I'm glad you're happy. But remember, your improvement came mainly from your efforts. Keep working like this, and you'll all become excellent shinobi. He meant it. It wasn't about favorability or game-like rewards. He simply wanted these kids to be strong enough to survive whatever the future might bring. In less than 5 months since he'd transmigrated, he felt little belonging to Konoha, yet he couldn't bear the idea of children being sent to a battlefield unprepared. He was still a fledgling when measured against the village's schemers like Danzo, but his desire to train these kids properly was genuine. Hiruzen stepped forward. "I was worried before coming today, but seeing how hard these children have worked, I am relieved," he said, smiling benevolently. "The new generation of the village is diligent. The sacrifices of our predecessors were not in vain. Where Konoha dances, the will of fire will continue to burn. You are the new leaves. Nothing pleases me more than watching you grow." With that, the official portion ended, but the students lingered. They blindfolded Mu Yue and insisted on a surprise. After using a small ninjutsu to scan the surroundings, Mu Yue allowed them to guide him. "Ta-da! A supersized 5-layer cake!" Anko cried. When the blindfold came off, Mu Yue found himself surrounded by students and a cake nearly his height, bedecked with 18 kunai-shaped decorations and hundreds of tiny candles. "Jonin Mu Yue, thank you for teaching us this past month," they shouted. More than half of the 300-plus students hadn't known him well before the training. Some had only had a class with him. Others knew him by reputation. But during those weeks, they'd come to appreciate a teacher who was patient, disciplined, and tireless. They had feared the grouping might mean favoritism, but Mu Yue's main body rotated through all 3 groups, while a shadow clone managed each one. Every student got his attention. He learned each of their names and gave individual corrections. He worked through breaks, explained theory, and often taught like 4 people instead of 1. The ordinary kids who usually got overlooked felt cared for, and that warmth drove their effort. "The cake's from a group contribution," Obito explained. 18 kunai because you're 18. And there are 359 candles. Everyone put one in. Their innocent smiles touched Mu Yue. Young students were pure. If someone treated them well, they returned the kindness. "When I'm more capable, I'll do what I can for you," he thought, quietly moved. "You really went to a lot of trouble," Mu Yue said, his smile bright as the sun. "No trouble at all. If you become homeroom teacher of Class 6, Grade 4, we'd be happy," Shiranui Genma joked. "Make sure Class 3 gets you," others chimed in. The Class 2 students didn't argue. They trusted Ikeyu to keep Mu Yue as their subject teacher. "No, this can't be. Jonin Mu Yue has to be homeroom for Class 1, Grade 1. Anko protested playfully. Mu Yue laughed. "Share the cake. If I ate all of it myself, you probably wouldn't see your Jonin Mu Yue again." They began to cut the cake. Mu Yue made a few shadow clones to speed things up. As they ate, stories of the training circulated. Funny slip-ups, embarrassing moments, proud improvements. Kotetsu Hagane leaned toward Ebisu with some news. "Your genius reputation reached the Hokage," he announced excitedly. Ebisu paled. "What? In front of the Hokage?" he muttered, recalling a moment when Kotetsu had loudly called out Ebisu's name as the chief contributor to perfecting the enemy confusion technique. It had been meant as a playful nod of thanks, but Ebisu feared it would earn him an unwanted reputation. A cake fight followed the tense moment, leaving everyone messy but laughing. "Don't be sad," Mu Yue assured them at the end. "I'm not leaving as a teacher at the academy. If you need help, come find me. I'll always be your Jonin Mu Yue." His mood was buoyant. Between the promotion, the students' gratitude, and the system's unexpected reward, today felt like a second gift since his transmigration. As the crowd dispersed, Asuma fell into step with Hiruzen, remembering Mu Yue's earlier comments about Asuma's sparring. He asked, "How did I do in my match today?" Hiruzen shook his head and smiled faintly. "Too many mistakes. If I were you, there would be 100 ways to win." Asuma's smile faded. He walked past Hiruzen and went home, a little stung but thoughtful, already planning to do better next time. When he got home, Mu Yue unrolled the scroll Hiruzen had given him. It was essentially an appointment letter, formal, stamped and signed by Hiruzen Sarutobi, the 3rd Hokage, promoting him to Special Jonin. It felt weightier than the single sheet that had marked his chuunin promotion in his original memories. This kind of appointment deserved a scroll. He laid it aside and returned to the sealing technique materials Kushina had given him. The 5-element seal was far harder than he'd expected, a truly high-difficulty sealing technique. It had been 12 days since he began learning what some called the 5-finger seal, and his proficiency was still hovering in the low 80s. He hadn't even reached an introductory level yet. Mu Yue thought about using a skill proficiency scroll to push the seal to mastery, but decided against it. Wasting such a rare item on a practice sealing technique that had little practical use felt wrong. His sealing talent was good. If he kept at it, he could learn it naturally. So he wanted to save the scroll for truly difficult, high-value jutsu. If he ever had the chance to obtain the Flying Thunder God technique and learn its basics, that would be a perfect time to use a skill proficiency scroll. The system rules suggested proficiencies could stack if you acquired the same jutsu repeatedly. Several scrolls might even get a technique to master level. A knock downstairs interrupted his thinking. He put the materials down and opened the door. "Jonin Mutsuki, the third Hokage, asked me to deliver these," the messenger said, handing him 3 scrolls. Mu Yue thanked him and invited him in for tea, but the ninja declined politely and left. Mu Yue smiled inwardly. Hiruzen's men were disciplined. At least they knocked before arriving, unlike some people he knew. He opened the scrolls one by one. The first contained 2 ninjutsu: water release, water colliding wave, and fire release, great dragon fire technique. Both were useful. Water colliding wave needed few seals and could be used offensively or defensively, while great dragon fire technique was a flexible fire release. Mu Yue already had proficiency in great dragon fire and had once learned water colliding wave through teaching, but now he had official permission to use them openly. The second scroll was simple: 300,000 ryo in cash. Given that a ninja academy teacher's monthly pay was 100,000 ryo, Hiruzen had essentially given him 3 months' salary at once. Mu Yue accepted it without qualms. It was well earned. He had taught 8 fourth-grade classes, plus some outstanding students from other grades, and a handful of graduated genin. Even if Hiruzen had handed him 10 times his salary, it would have been deserved. The third scroll laid out his assignments. The Ninja Academy started in 9 days. Teachers were to arrive a week earlier than students, so Mu Yue would report in 2 days. Hiruzen wanted to promote him to vice-class leader of the teachers' cohort, but because Mu Yue had only served briefly as a regular instructor and might attract controversy, Hiruzen would instead appoint him grade director for 1 semester and then elevate him to vice-class leader in the 3rd semester. That was the most important thing in the package. Mu Yue didn't care so much about a salary bump. What mattered was the authority that came with promotion. With that authority, he could push for more tangible rewards. From the summer special training, he already knew that large classes paid double the rewards of regular classes. If he could reform the curriculum to add more large classes, he could increase his income and relieve pressure on the other teachers. Instructors like Ikeya Yu, who taught 2 classes back-to-back, had almost no free time. Of course, not every class could be made large. Ninjutsu and Taijutsu classes were difficult to manage at scale and would suffer under inexperienced instructors, but theoretical subjects could. Teaching topics like ninja world history, Konoha history, and mathematics to a larger group from the Fron Tiro would be far more manageable. As long as students paid attention, the effectiveness wouldn't drop much. Reading the scroll, Mu Yue felt Hiruzen's goodwill. Hiruzen might quietly tolerate a root ninja serving as a regular teacher, but he would hardly promote a root operative into a prominent position without good reason. That signaled a shift. Mu Yue guessed he might soon be able to leave root, perhaps without having to break the cursed seal himself. If the time came, Danzo might even have to remove it personally. In Konoha, Danzo couldn't simply override Hiruzen. The Hokage's authority was decisive. At dinner that evening, Mu Yue mentioned his special Jonin promotion casually to Kushina and Minato. Kushina blinked, surprised that the 3rd Hokage had moved so quickly. "Did the 3rd Hokage always act this fast?" she asked. Minato smiled, pleased for him. "Now we can all go to meetings together," he said. There was a big difference between chuunin and jonin, especially in wartime. A jonin's rank carried real authority, the right to lead important missions and command a team. Kushina smiled and sighed. I always thought you had a knack for sealing techniques, Mu Yue. I thought you might become a special jonin because of that, but I underestimated you, Jonin Mutsuki. She admitted she had planned to help him with sealing techniques after testing his talent, but his teaching ability had pushed him into special jonin status just as his sealing studies were starting to take off. For now, I'm still behind you in Minato, Mu Yue replied with a laugh. Becoming a formal jonin is my next goal. You can do it if you keep training, Minato encouraged. Since Kushina had brought up sealing techniques, Mu Yue steered the conversation back to his training, describing some of the problems he was encountering. He wouldn't rely entirely on others. He'd continue his own research. The more techniques he mastered, the stronger he'd be. Even if it wasn't solely to deal with the root-cursed seal, advancing his sealing skill would make him a more capable shinobi overall. Chapter 117, The Conscientious Mu Yue. After finishing his meal, Mu Yue lingered for a while, then took out a blank scroll and began drafting the mission report for Danzo. Judging by the current situation, Hiruzen Sarutobi should be asking for him soon, but it was better not to celebrate prematurely. He had to be absolutely certain. Mu Yue made sure to include Hiruzen Sarutobi's inspection visit earlier that day, emphasizing the third Hokage's praise and attention toward him to create the impression that the third Hokage favored and wanted to recruit him. He also recorded the rewards he had received, using them to underscore Hiruzen's high regard. What Mu Yue deliberately left out was the work assignment scroll Hiruzen had discussed with him. If Hiruzen didn't request him from Danzo immediately, this mission report would preserve Mu Yue's image as a loyal root ninja and might prevent Danzo from causing trouble. He distrusted Danzo completely, so he took every precaution to avoid any accidents. If Hiruzen truly did ask for him soon, the report would do no harm. At worst, it would show Mu Yue as dutifully completing Danzo's orders, rather than as a devoted rootist. The content of Hiruzen's work assignment was known only to the third Hokage and Mu Yue. As long as Mu Yue didn't write it down, Danzo couldn't learn it from the report. Mu Yue folded the scroll and put it on his person, then headed to the south border forest to meet his students. Good evening, Mu Yue-sensei? Obito and Rin Nohara arrived at the same time, smiling as they greeted him. Good evening, Obito Rin, Mu Yue replied with a smile. Ever since Rin had started coming to the after-school forest training, Obito had been arriving a bit earlier. Today he was full of energy. He'd had bad luck in the strength test earlier. He drew a number that put him against Shisui in the second round and had been thoroughly beaten. Fortunately, the practical exam was scored as well as ranked. Even though Obito had been eliminated in the second round, he'd performed well in both fights and earned a high score. Otherwise, it might have affected Mu Yue's rewards. Obito accepted the defeat, but he was still stung. Shisui was younger, yet dominated him. Obito saw hope in flame breathing. It was a powerful secret technique, and he'd shown unusual aptitude for it, an opportunity to overtake Shisui through hard work. As soon as training began, Obito asked Mu Yue to help secure him for practice. Mu Yue was pleased to see him so diligent. School was starting soon, and this month would likely settle the matter of training missions. If Obito didn't push himself now, the mission would fail again. Mu Yue couldn't intervene with Metgai's training assignment on Obito's behalf. There were still rewards for second place, so the right approach was to motivate Obito to improve. Since Metkai had already assimilated the content Mu Yue had taught in their earlier spar, Mu Yue planned to start a new round of lessons. Next, he said to Metkai, you need to sense the power of rock and try to merge with it. It sounded abstract, but it was an essential step for the breathing technique. The breathing techniques were tied to belief and spiritual energy. As the Hokage had explained, they had some connection with yin release. The stronger the faith, the stronger the technique. If the belief was weak, even the blade would falter. Merge with the rock? Metkai thought for a moment, then used the transformation technique to turn himself into a rock. Mu Yue-sensei, should I practice the breathing technique in this form? Mu Yue hesitated. In the rock-breathing training memories that surfaced in his mind, the step had been done while sitting on a rock. But turning into a rock was likely even more effective than simply sitting on one. Sit on a rock. Then use the transformation technique to turn into a rock, he suggested after a moment's thought. Why choose when you could do both? Metkai complied. He released the transformation technique, found a large rock, sat on it, and then transformed into a rock while seated. After the session, Mu Yue used his appraisal technique to check Metkai's proficiency. It was unchanged from yesterday, still 19. Mu Yue wasn't surprised. Rock breathing was difficult, and the effects of his previous breakthrough were wearing off. It wasn't reasonable to expect another quick rise. It might not increase again for days. He glanced at Obito. His flame-breathing proficiency was steadily improving. It had reached 8 points. Guy, why did you turn into a rock? Obito asked, puzzled. Mu Yue-sensei told me to merge with the rock and sense its power, Metkai answered honestly. I figured turning into a rock would count as merging. Merge with a rock? Does the training get harder later? Obito scratched his head. If rock breathing required merging with rock, did flame breathing require merging with flames? Could the transformation technique make you into fire? Would he have to jump into a bonfire? I have an idea, Obito said, imagination running. You could hollow out a rock and sleep inside it. Then you'd be merging with rock while you slept, and your training would speed up. Metkai looked thoughtful. So for the next step, I'll have to sleep in a bonfire? Mu Yue tapped Obito's head with 2 fingers. Sleeping in a bonfire would be getting burned alive. Sleeping in a rock might only make your back sore. Hey, it's different, Obito chuckled. Sleeping in a bonfire is death. Sleeping in a rock is uncomfortable but manageable. Perceive the power of rock, Shisui murmured, thoughtful. If it was merely about sensing an element, could flame breathing be trained through nature transformation to sense fire's power? After training, Mu Yue dropped the scroll he'd carried at the mission report submission point, then returned home to wait for a response. The next morning, Mu Yue detected movement and immediately activated his perception ninjutsu. Someone with a considerable amount of chakra had entered his courtyard. He rose calmly and went outside to find a root operative in a root uniform and mask standing there. The organization's latest directive, the root ninja said coldly, sliding 2 scrolls across to Mu Yue. He didn't hang around afterward, vanished in a flash. Mu Yue opened one scroll first. A status readout filled his vision. Name, Yamanaka Longye. Chakra, 6400. Skills, Mind Transfer Jutsu. Proficiency, 1200-3000. Evaluation, a Jonin with good support abilities. Compared to Mu Yue's own panel, the root Jonin who had once made him uneasy was now completely outclassed. Mu Yue's chakra was more than twice Yamanaka Longye's, and his skill list was overwhelming. He had multiple proficient-level nature transformations and secret techniques, while Longye didn't even have a single proficient-level skill. There was no point comparing himself to an ordinary root Jonin like that. Mu Yue wondered privately what Danzo's panel would look like. If ranks were cultivation levels instead of titles, Danzo would probably be Kage level, powerful, but not on par with the true heavyweights like Hiruzen Sarutobi, the 3rd Raikage, or Onoki. The second scroll contained Danzo's orders. Danzo was pleased Mu Yue had been promoted to Special Jonin based on ability, but he stressed one non-negotiable rule: never expose his identity as a root member and continue carrying out missions under that cover. Mu Yue skimmed the rest, the usual ideological rhetoric, and ignored it. He could tell Danzo was both surprised and pleased by his progress. Sending him into the Ninja Academy had probably seemed like a casual move, given the original owner had shown nothing special. The last item was Danzo's reward, and it wasn't a new jutsu or money. It was a cultivation elixir. Mu Yue burned the mission scroll on principle, but put the medicine away. He wouldn't take a secret medicine gifted by Danzo on impulse, but cultivation elixirs were valuable. No sense wasting it. It was Sunday. The summer special training had just finished yesterday, so Mu Yue gave the students half a day off. Only morning training, nothing in the afternoon. Perfect. He planned to go teach Asuma later that afternoon. Where should we go play if we're off this afternoon? Obito asked even before training started, already planning outings with Rin. Sorry, Obito. I need to study at home today, Rin replied apologetically. She'd been looking into medical ninjutsu lately and didn't have time to hang out. You could go play with Kakashi, she added. Obito paused. feeling something inside him shift. I can sense my chi more clearly lately. Maybe flame breathing is about to break through. I should train this afternoon instead. He wasn't going to go bothering Kakashi unless he had something worthwhile to show off. Training's good, Rin said softly. We'll graduate soon, then we'll be real ninja. 2 semesters felt short, about 7 months including holidays. At the thought of becoming a ninja, Obito's imagination ran wild. Then I can take missions and earn money, stop relying on grandma's allowance, and buy her gifts. Mu Yue tapped Obito to bring him back down. To earn money, you need strength first. The higher the mission rank, the more money it pays, but the harder it is. He explained how mission payments worked. S-rank missions were essentially off-limits to ordinary ninja. D, C, and B ranks were where most earnings came from. D rank paid from about 5,000 to 50,000 Ryo, C rank from 30,000 to 100,000 Ryo, and B rank could reach up to 200,000 Ryo. That was why capable ninja didn't usually take chuunin teaching jobs. A chuunin teacher's salary, around 10,000 Ryo a month, wasn't much compared to what you could make running missions, and 2 C-rank missions could already earn more than that. Not every C-rank mission meant fighting another ninja. If hostile ninja P read, the rank would usually jump to B or higher. That said, being a village teacher had its comforts. The academy paid a steady wage. Some positions could be as high as a fixed 100,000 Ryo a month, depending on rank and bonuses, and you didn't have to run yourself into the ground on missions. High-quality shuriken and kunai, explosive tags, and cultivation medicines were all expensive. If you wanted to invest heavily in getting stronger, a field ninja's unpredictable earnings often weren't enough. For those content to take it easy, teaching at the Ninja Academy was a pleasant, stable life. Obito chuckled and returned to his flame-breathing practice. In the afternoon, Mu Yue went to Hiruzen Sarutobi's house to pick up Asuma for their lesson. Mu Yue noticed Asuma was in a sour mood and asked gently why. Because it was Mu Yue asking, Asuma told him what had happened yesterday, growing more agitated as he spoke. He's always like this, like I'm worthless in his eyes. When I ask about my performance, it's always not good enough, too many mistakes. He won't even say it's okay. Was my performance really that bad? Asuma's voice broke and his eyes clouded with tears. Mu Yue recognized the old sting of living under relentless criticism. He couldn't help but think that Asuma still had a deep fondness and longing for Hiruzen Sarutobi, which was why the criticism hurt so much. Don't worry, Mu Yue said, patting Asuma's head. You did your best in that battle. Obito was just stronger. Mu Yue understood this feeling intimately. In his previous life, his parents had been unusually strict about grades. He'd done well in elementary and middle school, often top marks in math and language, but when he scored perfectly, his parents would say the test was easy or the teacher lenient. If he slipped, they'd say he wasn't working hard enough. Over time, he lost confidence. Only later, after 2 years of drifting, did he correct his course. His parents loved him, but their tough teaching style had left marks. Teacher, if you can see it, why can't he, Hokage, see it? Asuma muttered, lingering resentment still there. Mu Yue spent a while comforting him. He reminded Asuma that Hiruzen, as a father figure, wanted the best for him even if his methods were harsh. With some emotional release and a solid afternoon of training, Asuma's mood lifted visibly. As Mu Yue walked away, he thought to himself, Hiruzen Sarutobi needs to be more careful. Don't let him disappoint me. Between teaching battle skills and calming family tensions, Mu Yue often felt like more than a tutor. On Monday, Mu Yue went to the Ninja Academy for a faculty meeting. 119, conducting large-scale pilot courses, 25. Good morning, Teacher Mu Yue. Morning, Teacher Kubo. Have you eaten yet, Mu Yue? Want to grab breakfast after the meeting? I already have, thanks. It was morning, and word of Mu Yue's promotion to Special Jonin had clearly spread among the faculty. More people than usual stopped to greet him. Thankfully, Mu Yue's memory had improved. He could recall the names of almost everyone he'd met now, so the small parade of salutations put him at ease. The first faculty meeting of the new term was a general assembly in the lecture hall. The third Hokage, the school's nominal principal, wasn't present. The teacher head presided in his stead. A new semester has begun. I expect everyone to continue their hard work and do their best to train excellent ninja for the village, the head said. As opening speeches go, it was the same bland formality school leaders always offered. Meaningful, perhaps, but dull. The meeting contained little of substance. They highlighted outstanding teachers from the previous term and announced any major position changes. Teacher Mu Yue will serve as head of Grade 1 and be responsible for Grade 1's teaching arrangements, the head of the teachers announced with a smile. Teacher Mu Yue has been an outstanding instructor at our school. During the break, he worked tirelessly with students and served as a model for everyone. Mu Yue stood and bowed. The room burst into applause. No one was surprised. Aside from the third Hokage, Mu Yue was now one of only 3 jonin assigned to the school, and his promotion to special jonin for teaching excellence was deserved. Congratulations on your promotion, Jonin Mu Yue, Kimura Sugito called out with a grin. You went from regular teacher to head of Grade 1 in a semester. Lucky you, Ikigaya Yu added, smiling. Ueda Aya chimed in too. They all shared the same small office, and at least on the surface, had a friendly relationship. Just call me Mu Yue, please, he replied with a gentle smile. Jonin still feels strange, and anyway, I'm a special jonin, not a formal jonin. Special jonin is still jonin, Ikigaya chuckled, but we'll stick with Mu Yue if you prefer. You've earned a promotion and a raise. This calls for a celebration. Izakaya tonight, my treat, Ikigaya announced, feeling generous. His teacher bonus still left him some spare cash. I'm coming too, Kimura said, looping an arm through Ikigaya's. But you're paying for yourself. You're treating Mu Yue and not me? Kimura went for a headlock. All right, I'll pay for you as well. When Ueda Aya spoke up, calling Ikigaya in a teasing tone that gave him goosebumps, he quickly declared that everyone was included. Mu Yue smiled. He didn't mind an occasional outing with colleagues, but his main body was busy. He usually sent a shadow clone instead. With Ikigaya and the others' level of awareness, no one could tell the difference. He had a peculiar arrangement. Unlike clones in other settings, his experience didn't involve suffering. His original self spent most of each day teaching, so students would receive the skill teaching bonus. His clone could go out drinking and be the life of the party. There was no choice. Clones didn't transmit that particular bonus, so the main body had to be the one to teach. That afternoon, he attended a smaller, substantive meeting. The grade heads and the academic dean, Shimono Hisanobu, gathering in the conference room to finalize teaching plans for the semester. Dean Shimono, I have a suggestion that might relieve some pressure on the teachers, Mu Yue said. All eyes turned to him. Though relatively new, Mu Yue was respected. The third Hokage trusted him, and no one was inclined to dismiss his ideas. The teachers' schedules are indeed packed, Dean Shimono agreed. What do you propose, Teacher Mu Yue? Consolidate classes for large group instruction, Mu Yue answered. Schedule the same subject for 2 or more classes at once, combine them, and have a single teacher lead. Where you'd normally need 3 teachers for 3 classes, you'd only need 1. Thoughtful expressions spread through the room. The idea clearly had merit for reducing teacher workload. Wouldn't that affect teaching quality? Shimono asked after a moment. Even if teachers are overburdened, we can't let students' learning suffer. I piloted large group instruction during the summer intensive, Mu Yue said. The results were good. Students made solid progress. 2 of the grade heads who had gone with the third Hokage to observe nodded. They remembered his approach. How many students did you teach? One of the grade heads asked. 359 total, Mu Yue replied. I split them into 3 groups according to learning progress. Maybe start small, he added. A pilot program limited to grade 1 and only for theoretical classes. Dean Shimono mulled it over. Grade 1 students weren't close to graduation. A semester-long experiment would be low risk. And if theory classes were slightly less interactive, it wouldn't matter as long as practical combat training remained strong. All right, Shimono said finally. This will be handled by you, Teacher Mu Yue. I'll do my best, Mu Yue replied with a modest nod. Everything was unfolding as he'd planned. He could set up more large group sessions, raise the standard of Class 1 in Grade 1 to trigger improvement rewards, and with Obito's mission aiming for first place, their collective strength would climb again. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the village, Anbu informed Danzo that he was needed at the Hokage's office. Danzo didn't overthink it. Meetings with the third Hokage were normal for someone of his rank and responsibilities. Danzo pushed open the Hokage's office door and walked in without knocking. Hiruzen Sarutobi stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out over Konoha. From the height of the Hokage building, the entire main district spread beneath them. "Hiruzen, is there something you wanted to talk about?" Danzo asked. Hiruzen turned, nodded, and said, "Look at the documents on my desk." Danzo crossed to the desk, picked up the papers, and began to flip through them. One name jumped out at him, Hayate Mugetsu. Seeing that name made his eyes narrow. A suspicion formed instantly. He had warned that person not to reveal his identity. How had he been discovered so quickly? Danzo's face, however, gave nothing away. He continued scanning the file. It contained mostly information about Hayate, Mugetsu's abilities, records, and recommendations. Is this just about promoting a special jonin with good teaching credentials? Does it really need both our approvals? Danzo asked casually, feigning ignorance. He would never admit to having sent anyone into the academy. Hiruzen chuckled. "Danzo, don't play dumb. You didn't only send him to the academy. He's a root operative you trained illegally." He tossed more documents across the desk. Danzo read them and felt his expression change. These files didn't just confirm his secret training of Hayate, they listed other covert operatives as well. Danzo hadn't expected his hidden network to be visible to the third Hokage. Despite operating root under the guise of Anbu training, Danzo had assumed Hiruzen would not pry too deeply. Hiruzen, however, had never allowed Danzo's power to grow unchecked. He limited root's numbers. That restriction was precisely why Danzo cultivated agents like Hayate in secret. Now confronted with the evidence, Danzo tried to justify himself. "I do this to protect Konoha," he said. "The number of root members you've allowed isn't sufficient. With a large war coming, Konoha needs more protection." "Are you really saying Konoha should stand aside?" Hiruzen tapped the table. "Let's set the war aside for now. We need to discuss your illegal recruitment." "There are 5 of them in total," Hiruzen continued, his voice sharpening. 3 of them are descendants of war heroes. How dare you take them without permission, Danzo? Are you trying to undermine Konoha's will of fire?" By war heroes he meant ninja who had died in battle, Hayate's parents among them. Danzo said nothing at first. Recruiting the children of those who sacrificed themselves for the village was a dangerous step. He still tried to argue. "I'm training talent for Konoha. Isn't Hayate Mugetsu already promoted to special jonin? Isn't he an asset?" Hiruzen was blunt. "He might have been even better without your interference." In his assessment, Hayate was indeed talented, an excellent teacher, gifted in sealing techniques, competent in fire and water release. But those qualities didn't make him suitable for root. "Mugetsu will not remain in root," Hiruzen declared. "Tomorrow you must come to the Hokage building and remove the cursed seal from him." Danzo's fists clenched. "You can't do that. I cultivated him. I'm the head of root." "If you refuse, you will regret it," Hiruzen said calmly. Danzo hesitated, then asked, "What about the resources I spent on him?" Hiruzen exhaled a cloud of pipe smoke and pointed at the documents. The meaning was clear. There would be no compensation for illegal cultivation. Danzo realized he had no leverage. He took a deep breath and said coldly, "I'll come tomorrow." He turned for the door. "Hiruzen, you will regret this," he warned on his way out. "I am the Hokage," Hiruzen replied from his chair. The office door slammed behind Danzo. Once outside, Danzo's mood shifted back to its usual calm. He had put on a show of fury in the office to express indignation and to see if Hiruzen would offer compensation. Hiruzen offered none, but by pointing at the documents and stopping after Hayate, he had signaled something else. The other 4 recruits would effectively remain en route, unofficially. They would not be listed on any roster, but they wouldn't be handed over either. That tacit concession left Danzo unsatisfied but not ruined. He was secretly relieved that A had not been discovered. Seeing the list of covert agents, his heart had lurched with the fear that his secret wood-release operative had been exposed. As long as that wood-release ninja remained hidden, Danzo judged the future balance of power in Konoha could still tilt in his favor. Even if the rest of his agents were compromised, the wood-release power, if he could cultivate it properly, might decide who truly controlled the village later. On the walk back to the root base, he stewed about losing Hayate. He had planned to place him in the academy, to have another foothold of influence there. Now that plan had been cut short. "Notify Knight to come here," Danzo ordered a subordinate as soon as he returned to the root base.